Welcome to this opening session of our 2023 Fall Annual Town Meeting. This is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School on Saturday, October 21 at 8 a.m. and it's being held as a hybrid, in person and remotely. At this time, we will begin with a salute to the flag, proudly led by the Plymouth Fire Department Honor Guard, followed by our national anthem, performed by Plymouth North High School sophomore Allie Chamberlain, and an invocation offered by Father Joseph Rake from St. Peter's Church in Plymouth.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Let us pray. Gracious and loving Father, we praise you and thank you for the gift of this time that we share together. We ask that you bless all of us who are gathered here, that your spirit of truth, may guide and lead the discussions, all that is shared this night, this day, so that everyone who is here may be strengthened by the encouragement of one another, that we may listen with not only our ears, but with our hearts to each other, and that your truth may be known and your truth may lead us to enrich our community, the whole community of Plymouth. Bless especially those who are struggling. Help all of us to see their struggle and to respond with compassion. Bless our community and help us to become better through your Spirit leading us in ways of truth, openness, and compassion. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Town Clerk Kelly McKelreath has advised me that we now have a quorum of at least 108 elected town meeting members, and I therefore declare that a quorum being present, this Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting will come to order at 8:04 a.m. This time, we welcome Richard Quintal. He is the Select Board Chair, and he will present his opening remarks. Good morning, Richard Quintal. It's Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting coming to you live. Mr. Quintal.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, town meeting members. I'd like to introduce a couple of administrators who are presently here for the first time today. Mr. Bill Coyle, DPW Director. Ms. Michelle Brady, the town's first Commissioner of Health and Human Services, formerly the Director of the Center of Active Living. Thank you both for leading your departments in this very complex community. I want to spend a few minutes today talking about succession planning. I have mentioned succession planning to the town manager on a number of occasions, and now, working with my colleagues on the board, we have included succession planning as a major goal for fiscal '24. Since 2022, the town has lost 2 department heads to retirement. 1 department head left to be a town manager in another community, and the other department head, left to be an assistant town manager in a different community. Plus, we are projecting to lose a few more department heads to retirement in the next 3 to 5 years. Not only does departments leave a vacuum in leadership, but it becomes a major strain on how we deliver high-quality municipal services. Our lack of succession planning over the past 10 years has now caught up with us. So to give you a glimpse into the future, we'll be working on with the town manager and his staff to develop a long-term succession plan that will come before you all in April. As we start strategically about the town's future, as we think, with master planning, we have to do some of our personnel, and that's our intent. I thank you all for attending today. Let's all have a great day, and as always, God bless America's hometown.
Thank you, Richard Quintal. He is the chair of the Select Board for the town of Plymouth. At this time, we welcome Stephen Neerman. He is the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. He will deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Neerman.
Yes, I move that adjourned session of this fall meeting.
Actually, we're going to come back to that, Mr.
Okay.
Neerman.
All right. So, hi, I am Steve Neerman, and I stand before you as just 1/15 of the Advisory and Finance Committee for the town of Plymouth. Our committee is comprised of 15 members across the town's 18 precincts. It is our responsibility to consider all matters proposed to be acted at all town meetings. I present to you the following names of my colleagues who have spent the last 4 months as volunteers vetting out articles and helping prepare you, the town meeting representatives, for today's fall town meeting. And most of our members are standing up here, alphabetically backwards. Robert Zuccarelli, Jim Young, Evelyn Strawn, Ashley Shaw, Bethany Rogers, Christine Richards, Lorenzo Pizarro, Timothy Lawler, Joe Lally, Bruce Howard, Daniel Green, Brian Dunn, Louis Cabana, and Gail Butler. I'd also like to recognize Evelyn Strawn, who for her longtime service to not just this committee, but many others in this town, as she is leaving us for the other coast. I don't know why, but she is. I'd also like to recognize, big hand, thank you. Payback, Evelyn, payback. And I'd also like to recognize Kevin Canty, the former chair of the committee, did phenomenal work for a long time, and he left us for greener pastures as the select board member. So we all wish him well. So I thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Neerman. Once again, I've appointed Nicole Manfredi to serve as Assistant Town Moderator. If there are no objections, she will continue to serve. Welcome, Nicole. We also welcome Kathleen McKay and Michael Bergeron of RB Law. They will be serving today as Town Council throughout today's session of Town Meeting. Welcome, Kathleen McKay and Michael Bergeron. Once again, we'll be utilizing the electronic voting system and the vVoter virtual platform. Assistant Town Moderator Nicole Manfredi will now deliver her opening remarks and explain the electronic voting. Nicole.
Good morning. Today we welcome both in-person and remote town meeting participation. What happened? With 23 town meeting members joining us live via the Zoom webinar feature. Those members will be voting using the vVoter system. The remote participation option was offered to voting members who were not able to participate in person today. In-person members will be voting using the handheld electronic devices. To our members, this is glitchy. If at any time you need assistance with your device, please raise your hand to be recognized. Remote participants should use the chat feature. Message me in the chat. Please do not use the raise your hand feature. You will not be recognized. Please remember to refrain from casting. Thanks. That's okay. Can you hear me? Please remember to refrain from casting your vote until the light turns green. Votes cast too early or too late will not be recognized. If during the roll call you notice your vote was miscast or omitted, stand immediately to be noticed. Votes cannot be modified once we have moved on to the next article.
Thank you, Nicole Manfredi, and she will be serving as our assistant town moderator. We'd also like to welcome the staff of PAC TV. PAC TV provides video and audio support for today's hybrid town meeting, which is being held at Plymouth North High School. We also welcome representatives from OTI Technologies. They are providing technical support for our electronic voting and for the V-Voter platform. We welcome Jeffrey Horan and Mark Feit. We have a duty officer on duty for this session town meeting. He is in the room to my left. And according to the town charter, chapter the town clerk will keep a record of attendance, and pursuant to the next section, a representative town meeting member who cannot attend a section shall provide written notice to the town clerk. Anyone wishing to inquire as to reasons given for town meeting absence should check with the town clerk. As you heard from the assistant moderator, we do have a significant number of town meeting members who are also participating remotely. And a word about that, given the complexity of the hybrid town meeting model, we have a number of timelines that we've implemented. One of them is that if you wish to participate remotely at future town meetings, you will be notifying the town clerk no later than 1 week in advance of the town meeting. And the reason for that is that it takes time in order to label the clickers, set people up for being remote and bringing them in. PAC TV brings them in on the video conferencing. OTI brings them in on the V-Voter. So for that reason, we had people who did request as recently as this morning, and it just isn't possible to accommodate the late requests for the remote participation. So I wanted to give everybody notice for future town meetings that will be operating under these timelines. There have been written materials provided to town meeting members. They include a number of documents. One is the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee. There is also a supplement 1. You also have a motions document. And a word about the motions document. Again, we had to obviously set a timeline for that in order that they could be printed. We established the Thursday before town meeting at 3 o'clock. And the reason for that, again, is not only to give time for printing, but again, we have to coordinate with the technical support staff that we have for town meeting. For example, this morning there was a motion that was received in Article 17 that has to be provided to OTI, and they have that. I also received a procedural motion yesterday to divide Article 2A, and so that wasn't in the book. This morning I sat with the staff from OTI to make sure that they had the slide for that voting. So I'm trying to explain to everybody why we ask for the motions to be in advance, because not only do we want to put it in the motions book for everybody, we want to have it available virtually online, and we've got to coordinate with our support staff. We also have the book provided by the Community Preservation Committee, and so all of these materials are available to town meeting members and to the public upon request. Pursuant to Chapter 2, Section 10, Subsection 2, representative town meeting members shall notify the town clerk in writing prior to the town meeting session as to any articles giving rise to financial conflict of interest. Town meeting members are also reminded that the handset keypad includes an option to abstain if needed. Any Plymouth resident and taxpayer may speak on any matter. Non-residents may participate with the consent of town meeting. And for this town meeting, I do have some residents and taxpayers who have requested to be heard. We're going to follow our rule where town meeting members are heard first. I also have requests from some non-residents who have asked to be heard. Town meeting members, you are reminded we have a live cable audience. We request that if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. Once you've been recognized, please come down to the open microphone, identify yourself by name, by precinct, or by title. And if you're participating remotely, please use the V-Voter to notify us that you wish to speak. I have a monitor here that will provide me with that information on those who are participating remotely and wish to be heard. Town meeting members and officials are encouraged to identify yourself by name and precinct or title each time you speak, since the members of the cable audience may tune in at different times. Members of the Select Board are seated in the front center, and as you heard from Mr. Neerman, the Advisory and Finance Committee members are seated in the front rows to my right. Town meeting members are seated in the front part of the Center for Performing Arts, and the public is welcome, and you are encouraged to sit in the area behind town meeting members. Those who wish to present on an article are invited to come down upon the reading of the article and to sit in the front rows to my left. If you are remote, you can request to speak. You may be moved from the queue to be a panelist. In addition, if you anticipate you may be answering questions on an article, we request that you move close to a microphone at the start of the article. And again, if you're remote, you can be designated as a panelist. If you're called as a speaker on deck, please move to a microphone once your name has been announced. Some members also contacted me in advance, and they've been added to a speakers list. And we do that to try to keep the meeting going and to make sure that those people who know in advance they want to be heard, that they're called on probably before debate is closed. Again, because of the increased complexity of the town meeting, after this town meeting, the timeline for that list will end at Thursday at 3 before the town meeting. Anybody who wants to speak, certainly after that, can just get up at town meeting and wait your turn. But for those people that want to be on a list, be at the top of the list, you can contact me in advance prior to that Thursday at 3 o'clock. We'll be utilizing the electronic voting, and town meeting members will have 20 seconds in which to cast the vote. The assistant moderator and I will be available throughout the meeting. If you have special needs or concern, you don't wish to interrupt the meeting with a point of order, you can ask the assistant moderator and communicate to me. We ask that all your cell phones be turned off, and please consider keeping texting to a minimum in order to avoid distraction to other people. If you're remote, please turn off your television and other audible devices while you are speaking at town meeting. The town meeting debate is directed through the moderator. And again, as we said, all main motions and amendments to main motions are to be in writing, and all procedural motions, whenever practicable, are to be submitted in writing in advance. If you do wish to accomplish something procedurally during the course of the meeting, don't hesitate to get up and inquire. We'll attempt to frame an appropriate motion or questions that's consistent either with past practice or with our parliamentary handbook. Our parliamentary handbook is town meeting time, so we follow that. We don't follow Robert's Rules or some of the other parliamentary books. We follow town meeting time. Page 25, it says, even if all the rest of the meeting knows the answer, it does no harm to review and restate a principle from time to time, which is why I'm doing that. I got some calls this week from town meeting members who are new town meeting members, and they didn't know procedure. They asked, do we need a second on a motion? You know, do we need to speak the motion? How does that work? So I'm trying to explain for many of you who are veterans, you've heard this before. For those of you, it's for the first time. We want you to be able to participate fully as a town meeting member. Now, if an amendment is presented from the floor today, and it contains a legal question or has legal ramifications, I may confer with town council, and such a motion may be delayed until it's researched, written, or we may not accept it. And the best example would be bylaw changes. We've received a number of amendments as to bylaw amendments and revisions, and we've worked with the people who want to present those motions in advance to make sure that they'd be consistent with not only the bylaw that's before town meeting, but with all of our bylaws. And one of the articles that is before us today is to basically fix town meeting action that we had last year on a motion that was presented to me, handwritten moments before it was going to come up at town meeting. And because there wasn't time to research it, had to do, I believe, with maybe some funding, we now have to redo it. So there's reasons why we say to people, if you're thinking about making a motion, get it to us in advance so that all of the appropriate people, whether it's the director of finance, whether it's town council, we want to help you, but get it to us ahead of time so that you'll be successful, at least procedurally, on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Debate will be encouraged. If I'm notified in advance you wish to speak in an article, you will be listed on the schedule of speakers. I'll try to give everyone an opportunity to speak once before calling on people a second time. A formal petitioner presentation may be up to 15 minutes in length. We're asking the other speakers be 3 minutes in length. That would include question and answer exchanges. And you are all reminded that while the moderator may limit the scope of the debate, you limit the length of the debate. And so if you wish to close debate, a member may move the previous question to close debate. Again, a new town meeting member this week asked me about that. That is not debatable. You're not going to be arguing your point and then making it. You just get up and you say you want to close debate. That requires a 2/3 vote. As moderator and with the assistant moderator will be presiding throughout this town meeting, we will not become directly involved in the substantive discussion. We will be procedural facilitators to this legislative body and will attempt to be consistent and use common sense. Now, a motion to change the order of the articles requires a 2/3 vote. We have such a motion today. We may have a second one. A town meeting member who votes on the prevailing side of a motion can later move to reconsider, and that would be a majority vote. We will recess within 2 hours from the start of the meeting, as provided in our town charter, and the Plymouth School Music Association is providing refreshments during our recess. A quorum is presumed. When we take the recess, we'll reconvene within 15 minutes. Following the recess, we'll proceed with the warrant. Lunch will be served midday in the cafeteria, and it will be 45 minutes. And the coffee and tea will be available all day. We'll promptly return after the lunch recess. The return of the warrant of the fall annual town meeting shows that it's properly been served. If there are no objections, we will waive the reading of the constable's return of service of the warrant of the fall annual town meeting, and further, if there are no objections, we'll waive the reading of the warrant. If there are no other matters to come before the fall annual town meeting, then we're going to move with some procedural motions. The first motion, Mr. Neerman moves that all sessions of this fall town meeting be commenced and conducted as a remote hybrid representative town meeting by means of the Zoom webinar and OTI virtual vVoter platforms. Mr. Neerman, did you want to say anything on this?
Yeah, I move that the adjourned sessions of this fall town meeting.
Mr. Neerman, on the hybrid, did you have any comments on that?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, we're going to call for a vote. The light is on. You can now vote. You're voting as to whether to do a hybrid town meeting. You have the opportunity to vote yes, to vote no, or to abstain. And following the vote, we will take questions. And at this time, on this vote, we have people voting. Yeah, I will take it after the vote is over.
Sure.
The light is on, and we are voting. Yes is 1, no is 2, abstain is 3. And 20 seconds when the light goes off. After 20 seconds, OTI. And the light is off. And the vote is concluded. And we have the vote on this. 125 voting yes, 8 voting no, 1 abstentions. The motion carries. Again, using your clicker, 1 is a yes, 2 is a no, 3 is abstain. And now, after each vote, we will go through the clicker, showing the precincts beginning 1, 2, and 3. If you do have a point of order, it is appropriate to raise that before we start the voting. To be speaking during the voting is inconsistent with town meeting time and parliamentary procedure. You can also raise your point of order after the voting, but to interrupt the actual voting can be confusing to the voters. So I ask in the future, either raise it before the start of the voting or after the voting. We're continuing with the precincts 13, 14, and 15. And finally, we will continue with all 18 precincts, 16, 17, and 18. So again, town meeting members, you can see whether or not your vote was correctly recorded. If it wasn't, you can let us know following this vote. And further, the public can see how town meeting members voted. That is the first procedural vote. The second procedural vote, Mr. Neerman moves the adjourned session of this fall annual town meeting be held on Monday, October 23rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. at Plymouth North High School. Any discussion on the motion for the adjourned session? If not, we will vote when the light goes on. You'll have 20 seconds in which to vote. Once the light goes on, you can vote now. Town meeting members are voting. Those who are voting at home are on the V-Voter platform, and their votes are merged with the handsets that are here in the room in person in order that all town meeting members are simultaneously tabulated on the voting. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen the number of town meeting members who are voting in connection with this particular motion. Once the light goes off, the voting will be concluded. The light is off. 128 say yes, 3 say no, 4 abstain. The motion carries. And again, we're going to scroll through the list, look at the precincts in order to see how town meeting members voted on this adjourned session. And so if we do not conclude the business today, if town meeting adjourns before we complete action on all 24 articles, we will return on Monday evening at 6 o'clock at Plymouth North High School. Once town meeting is dissolved, there would be no further action on any article in town meeting. But town meeting can adjourn to another session. You now see all 18 precincts. We will now move to the third procedural vote that was contained in your motions packet, and it is George McKay, Precinct 8, moves to have Article 5 precede Article 2A. This is a 2/3 vote. I invite George McKay of Precinct 8 to come forward. Mr. McKay, if you wish to be heard on your motion to change the order. Welcome, George McKay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. When I read Article 2A, I was concerned that the memo that supported one of the line items referenced Article 5, if it passes. So it was very simple to put Article 5 ahead of Article 2A, and that was my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to change the order of articles that requires a 2/3 vote? If there is no further discussion, we will take the vote. When the light goes on, you'll have 20 seconds in which to vote. You can vote now. Town meeting members are voting. We have 162 elected town meeting members. and they are voting on the screen. We can see as their votes are being counted, and this again is a 2/3 vote of town meeting members. Town meeting is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School. The voting will conclude when the light is off. We are at Plymouth North High School on Saturday, October 21st. The total is 124 yes, no 13, 2 abstentions. The motion carries, and we will be proceeding to Article 5. We're looking now at the way in which people voted. The green is a yes, the red would be a no, and the yellow would be an abstention. We have just completed 3 procedural votes by our town meeting members who are representing 18 precincts in the town of Plymouth. And as we watch the final record of voting for the last motion, we will now proceed with Article 5. You have Article 5, which is contained in the packet, and we also have a motion. First, the motion from the Advisory and Finance Committee. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote to amend the town's general bylaws, Chapter 137, Blight Nuisances on Property, as written in the fall 2023 annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Neerman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 5 by a vote of 10 yes, 1 no, and 0 abstain. Approval of this article will authorize the town to adopt property standards for overgrowth, structures, accumulation of trash, rubbish or debris, pools of stagnant water, graffiti, and other determinations which pose a serious nuisance or serious threat to safety, health, and/or well-being of the town of Plymouth. Authorize the town to issue violations for failure to comply with the standards within 10 days of issuance of a violation, and to authorize the town to remove the nuisance at the owner's expense or take any other action to recover sum expended as allowed by law, including but not limited to a municipal lien on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Neerman. We have a number of motions to amend. So for this particular article, I'm going to only introduce one motion to amend at a time. We will limit the discussion to the particular motion to amend, and then we'll have a general discussion on the main motion as amended, if it is amended. So the first of the motions to amend would be George McKay, Precinct 8, moves to amend Article 5 to strike municipal property from the last sentence. Mr. McKay. Welcome to Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting. George McKay.
George McKay, Precinct 8. I had a couple of issues with this article, but I wanted to make it simple. And so my motion is to strike the last word out of the last sentence, which says municipals, our municipal is exempt from this bylaw.
Ms. McKay.
How do I get this to work now? Oh, there we go. Okay, so anyway, I took a ride around town to see where the graffiti was that was obvious. And one of the things I noticed before I took my ride was that there's a skate park in Holmes Park that we're voting on in Article 2A, line 45, which shows graffiti in the skate park. And this is a municipal piece of property. And so I think it should be addressed as part of this article. The other thing I did as I went to downtown Plymouth is I saw the graffiti on one of my favorite posters, which is the advertisement for the license plate. And you can see back last winter, there was a lot of graffiti on this poster, and I spent some time with the town fathers, and we eventually cleaned it up. And then I went around this spring, and guess what? There was more graffiti on the poster. And so with some glass cleaner and a cloth, I fixed that myself. So we now have on the bottom right-hand side a decent view of the license plate head. Down the street is some more graffiti on town property. Tourists see this all the time when they're downtown. This is graffiti outside of the town hall on town-owned property. This is graffiti near Nathaniel Morton School, and it's over the sign which says, please don't enter here because there are children playing, and I think that ought to be removed. This is graffiti that is in Nelson Park and also at the Plymouth Public Library. I just have one more slide, and this is the building owned by the town on 91 Long Pond Road, and as you can see, there's a substantial amount of graffiti on the building, and in addition to that, in the background, there's property which I think is infestated with rodents. So thank you very much.
Thank you, George McKay. Further discussion on the motion to amend? Anyone care to be heard? If not, we're going to go to the vote on the motion to amend. Again, this is a majority vote. When the light goes on, you'll have an opportunity to vote on the motion to amend. This is on the motion to amend presented by George McKay, Precinct 8. And it is the first motion. Here we go. We're voting. The light is on. Town meeting members are on Article 5, the first motion to amend. Town meeting members are voting. We have 162 town meeting members from 18 precincts in the town of Plymouth, and they are voting on a motion to amend under Article 5, a motion to amend the main motion under Article 5. When the light is off, the voting will conclude, and we'll have the totals. 101 say yes, 30 no, 5 abstentions. The motion carries. And as you look at the manner in which people vote, I will read into the record the second motion to amend, and I invite John Hammond, Precinct 18, to come forward on a motion to amend Article 5 to insert below Section 137-3A, overgrowth, the following. This section does not apply to any vegetation growth associated with agricultural use or the promotion of biodiversity. And this is also a majority vote, and we welcome John Hammond, Precinct 18. Mr. Hammond.
Good morning.
Morning.
I hope you can understand me through this mask. I'll be as articulate as I can. I'm not only a representative of Precinct 18, I'm a longstanding member of the Open Space Committee, and I was asked to present this amendment by universal vote of the committee. It simply seeks to add 4 words to Section 3A so that it reads, so that it reads, this section does not apply to any vegetation growth associated with agricultural use, or the 4 words are, or the promotion of biodiversity. And that's the motion. I don't know if there are questions or...
Thank you, Mr. Hammond.
Okay.
And this is the majority vote. Any discussion on the motion to amend being presented by John Hammond? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. It's a majority vote. When the light goes on, town meeting can begin to vote. You can vote now. Town meeting is in the first session. We are on Article 5. We are handling motions to amend. We will then go into some general discussion on Article 5, which is to amend a bylaw on blight and nuisance. Town meeting members are voting. We have 162 members in 18 precincts. Town meeting will continue throughout the warrant. We have 24 articles. 121 say yes, 15 no, 2 abstentions. The motion carries. We now have a main motion as amended with the 2 motions to amend. And as we're going through the precincts, I'm going to begin and invite Ethan Warren, Precinct 16, to come forward, to be followed by William Abbott, Precinct 16, as we debate the main motion under Article 5 as amended. Town meeting is in its first session, and we're going to begin as we go through all the precincts now. Mr. Warren, welcome to our town meeting.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. My name's Ethan Warren, Precinct 16, and I'm here to request that the entire Article 5 be voted against. It has 2 very big flaws. I'm sure it's brought with the best of intentions, and that enforcement would be intended to be done very judiciously, but it is far too overbroad. The language, sections A, B, and D may all be appropriate for city and very densely populated areas, but we live in a town that is still quite rural despite its size. And things like Section A, overgrowth, is kind of in the eye of the beholder, as well as the fact that overgrowth is a natural occurrence, especially down in the Pine Barrens where fires no longer take out the overgrowth, and to have land management requirements that go beyond benign allowance of growth is not appropriate. The requiring maintenance of properties in the language that is presented is well beyond requiring the taking down of dilapidated buildings. It goes well beyond that. And finally, the requiring maintenance or to not allow stagnant water. There are vernal pools all over the town. Yes, a parking lot that forever has a puddle that won't go away is one thing, but this language goes well beyond that. There's a second problem too, and that becomes in the enforcement, and it would put the inspector in a very difficult position because neighbors can now complain about other neighbors' properties, and again, it's what's in the eye of the beholder, and the inspector now would become a mediator between neighbor problems on something that are far too strict in their language. And I would be happy to try to be part of rewriting this and presenting it again, but as written, this time it should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan Warren. We invite William Abbott, Precinct 16, to be followed by John Hammond, Precinct 18. We are debating Article 5 in Plymouth's fall annual town meeting, coming to you live from Plymouth North High School. Good morning, Mr. Abbott.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator, and thank you. This article should be defeated, plain and simple. It grew out of an existing Plymouth bylaw that applied to properties where buildings were being torn down and required restoring the site. That's all it did. That made sense. But this bylaw has grown way beyond that. It's become so top-heavy with regulation of structures, rubbish, graffiti, standing water, and what the bylaw describes as vegetative overgrowth, that it's crushed by its own weight. It clearly doesn't apply to Plymouth, which is still very rural. Graffiti is only a small piece of it. Look at the overgrowth provision. It says all property must be maintained free of vegetation and may become infested with rodents and other animals. Think not just rats, but squirrels, rabbits, salamanders. It requires us to remove overgrown or dead trees and shrubs. The town can issue an order to clean up your property, and if you don't do it within 10 days, the town comes onto your property and removes it at your expense. There are serious fines and penalties for each day that the overgrowth continues. The first day is $50, the second is $100, it goes to $200. On the fourth and subsequent days, it's $400. Don't pay these fines and you end up with a lien on your property. This punitive bylaw might work in a city like Worcester, but it clearly doesn't belong in Plymouth. It is easy to think up the horror stories of neighbors calling out their neighbors to clean up their properties. I heard some officials say that we know who to enforce this against. Don't worry about it. Anytime you hear that kind of an argument for a bylaw, it's a dangerous bylaw. When you say, we know who we're going to enforce it against. The purpose, what we should be doing here today is to send this bylaw back. Rewrite it so that degraded commercial properties are covered, but don't saddle the rest of us with a nightmarish example of government overreach. This bylaw doesn't fit Plymouth, and amendments cannot fix it. You can't put lipstick on a pig. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. John Hammond, to be followed by Richard Cirque, Precinct 2. John Hammond is Precinct 18. We're debating Article 5, contained in the warrant of Plymouth's Fall Annual Town Meeting. It's coming to you live from Plymouth North High School on Saturday, October 21st. Mr. Hammond.
Well, Mr. Abbott has actually said much more clearly than I could what I think is wrong with this. It's overkill. It raises the specter of the lawn police. I could imagine somebody calling their neighbor, calling in a complaint about their neighbor because their grass is too long. And I don't know how that would fare under this. And I agree with the notion, I have heard people say, well, we would never do all these bad things. Well, then write it that way. Thank you.
Richard Cirque, Precinct 2.
I believe we should support this bylaw. And I say so because it's an effort primarily to remove the graffiti that mars our public property. That's what led to this bylaw. And I believe that we should trust in the Director of Inspectional Services' discretion as to how and when to enforce it. But if you believe that the pictures that Mr. McKay has shown are appropriate, well then vote against it. But if you're sick and tired, as I am, of seeing graffiti on public property in particular, then please support this bylaw.
Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm really thrilled that there's so much opposition toward this article. This was something that I raised at the COPC during our presentation forum when we were going through the articles. It was right away a red flag to me that the language is so incredibly vague, and it's completely up to interpretation. So I will give you some real-life examples. I happen to live in an area very rural to Plymouth. I have at least 30 acres of conservation land that sits in front of my property, and I'm surrounded by approximately 300 acres of conservation/private land that people are conserving for the environment and for wild spaces. We abut the 1,000 Acres Woods, and in that we have a lot of our residents that have decided that they're going to conserve acreage in their property and they're not going to disturb it so that we can keep wildlife in our area. I have a neighbor who takes a different approach, and they do not feel that this is a good idea. And so I have, over the years, been, I don't know how you'd say it, I've gotten several calls that I'm not allowed to hang bird feeders in my yard because it brings in mice and vole and rats, which yes, rats are a problem in Plymouth, they're a problem everywhere, but they live in the woods. So, this neighbor called the town several times demanding that I take down my bird feeders. There is a lot of overreach here. There's a lot of real life examples that are going to cause pain for our residents based on interpretation. I definitely think we need a bylaw put in place in order to address the issues in our town, but the language, as all of the people before me have said, except Richard Cirque, that we need to change the language. We can absolutely go back, correct the language, and in the spring, we can put forward a bylaw that's going to make sense. Bylaws are permanent. They're something we put in place that take a lot of effort to change. So the opportunity we have now is to change it right now. Thank you.
Michael Withington, Precinct 15, followed by Derek Brindisi, Town Manager. Mr. Withington.
Michael Withington, Precinct 15. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Finance Committee, Selectmen, all the town employees and town meeting members. I encourage you to vote no on this article, and the reason is I believe it's written too broadly. I believe that it targets some particular properties that do need to be addressed, and this is a positive step in the right direction, but not the right step. The way that I read this bylaw, if some holiday happens to come up, like let's say Halloween, and someone decides to spray paint the old lady or old geezer, such as myself, fence, and Inspectional Services is notified that this is a blight on the neighbor's property, so you have to go out and enforce it. And 10 days later, you start out with a fine. You have to go back and pay. If you don't repair it within the second day, you get another fine. And then another fine, and it's compounds. I believe that this is an overreach and overgrowth, and we don't need this particular language. I suggest that maybe you start out with commercial properties, not reaching into residential properties. So I encourage you to to push number 2 on the electronic voting machine and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Withington, Precinct 15. Derek Brindisi, Town Manager, followed by Peter Neville, Precinct 10.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, everybody. Derek Brindisi, Town Manager. So I just wanted to try to provide a little clarity to this. Thank you, Mr. Abbott, for referencing Worcester, my birthplace. I appreciate that. So just a couple of things I want folks to realize. Many of the sections embedded in this bylaw are excerpts from various statutes and regulations. So for example, under Chapter 111, Section 122, it speaks to public health nuisances. If you were to read that statute, and I'll read it to you all, the Board of Health shall examine into all nuisances, sources of filth and causes of sickness within its town, or on board of vessels within the harbor of such town, which may, in its opinion, be injurious to the public health, shall destroy, remove, or prevent the same as the case may be required, and shall make regulations for public health and safety relative thereto, into articles capable of containing, conveying infection or contagion, or creating sickness brought into or conveyed from the town or into from any vessel. Whoever violates any such regulation shall forfeit not more than $1,000. Talk about vague, talk about broad. That's a statute. We already have that ability to enforce that statute. What this bylaw does, it narrows down. It talks about what is and what isn't a public health nuisance. We have the language in the Chapter 2 of the State Sanitary Code that speaks of properties and how they should be maintained. We have that ability right now to do that. But what we're trying to do with this bylaw is to take those excerpts and put them in one focused bylaw so that we can get at these problem properties. In my first 2 years here, I would say I average 1 phone call per month about what are we doing with birds? What are we doing with that hole in the ground on Court Street? What's going on since the 2016 fire over at the Full Sail? And the answer is, we don't have any regulations that give us the teeth, that give us the ability to go after these problem properties. These properties have been abandoned. They're paying their taxes, but we have property owners who don't care about what's happening in this community. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the tools that we need in order to satisfy what you're all requesting us to do. It's as simple as that. And as far as how
30
this regulation
seconds.
came together, 30 seconds. How this regulation came together, we have town council here, our Commission of Inspectional Services. They reviewed, I would say, approximately a dozen various bylaws, Worcester being one of them, various bylaws, and we took what we thought was the best excerpts from each one of those bylaws to make it fit the town of Plymouth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is Derek Brindisi. He is our town manager. OTI Technology has advised me that someone was trying to use the handset to close debate. So a reminder, if you wish to close debate, you can get up, and as soon as a speaker has finished, such as right now, I would recognize you before we go on to other speakers. So if someone wishes to close debate, or if you're in the V-Voter, you can notify us through the V-Voter program. At this time, absent any motion to close debate, I'm going to continue with the debate. And Peter Neville, Precinct 10.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Peter Neville from Precinct 10. I rise this morning at the bequest of a constituent who called me, and it's the first time in my 3 terms here as a elected town meeting representative to hear from a constituent. So I felt compelled to get up and present his view, which was, I'll say negative, perhaps hostile to this article, insofar as he felt it was government overreaching into private property and his right to treat his property the way he felt was right. Mr. Abbott has articulated every one of the points that my constituents raised to me, and so I am in support of voting against this for those reasons, but additionally I'm opposed to this article because I found without the clarifications that the town manager has just offered in other statutes, I don't see any way to appeal a finding that my property is unattractive, doesn't fit the community image, may have rodents. So, I guess where is the forum where a case could be made against those allegations? I don't see that in the current bylaw. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Neville, Precinct 10. Mr. Lydon? Stephen Lydon moves the question. We have a number of people still waiting to be heard, and we have a point of order. What is the point of order?
I'm sorry if I'm behind the times, but I thought there was a motion to amend by Richard Cirque that hasn't been spoken on.
According to my understanding, Mr. Cirque did not wish to go forward if motion 1 passed. Thank you. So at this time, we're going to proceed with a vote to close debate, and it is a 2/3 vote. And when the light goes on, you will be voting as to whether to close debate. You can vote now. Town meeting members have been debating Article 5. Article 5 contained in the warrant, and we have a motion now to move the previous question, which is a motion to close debate. It is not debatable. It is a 2/3 vote on the quantum of vote. Town meeting members are now voting. 162 town meeting members are elected, and we currently have 134 who are voting, 136, 137 town meeting members are voting. We're up to 138. When the light goes off, the voting will conclude, and we will have the totals. 81 say yes, 56 say no, 1 abstention. We will scroll through the precincts, but as we scroll through the precincts, we're going to continue with Rayhan Flynn from Precinct 11. She'll be followed by Edward Conroy, Precinct 18, and then Betsy Hall, Precinct 16. Welcome, Ms. Flynn.
Yes, I too had a constituent call me about a property in our neighborhood in West Plymouth, which had been foreclosed, and we have a squatter in that property. The entire house is covered with weeds and dead wood, and the house is actually falling apart. It seems that it's owned by a bank down in North or South Carolina, and there's been some threats by the person squatting, as he's a vet, a disabled vet, and it's just become untenable for the entire neighborhood. If you saw this house, you would think somebody set it up as a haunted house. I am new at this, and I understand that government can definitely reach a little too far, and I understand, but public nuisance is the key word here in this article and the amendment in this article. So I hope that you will consider that that is defining it as something that will harm the rest of the area in terms of property value and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. Edward Conroy, followed by Betsy Hall. Edward Conroy is with Precinct 18, and we are debating Article 5 as amended. Mr. Conroy?
So I'd like to speak about the legal title effects on a residential home, not commercial, residential. When you put a lien on someone's home, the bank can call the loan. So say the individual who owns the residential home, say, is not doing so well, possibly in a nursing home, or is sick, or is struggling out there. And the children are trying to help that person. And then all of a sudden the town comes along and says, we're going to put a lien on the home. We're going to have it compound $400 per day. We can't afford, we have no money to pay the town to stop overreaching on mom's property. And then what's going to happen, the banks come along, call the loan, and get kicked out. If there's someone living, they get out of the nursing home. So this is overbroad. It should relate to commercial property and graffiti. I will not supporting this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy Hall, Precinct 16, followed by Nancy Davis, Precinct 2. Betsy Hall. Good morning.
Esteemed town meeting members, members of the audience, and residents of Plymouth, my name is Betsy Hall from Precinct 16. I am here to ask you to vote no on Article 5. I think that there's an attempt here to do something good for the town, but I don't think this is the right bylaw. I did look at the bylaw from the city of Worcester. This is almost identical to that particular bylaw, and I think it's a city bylaw. Plymouth does have suburban areas, but much of Plymouth is farmland. And we do not need a nuisance bylaw copied from a city. What we need is something that takes into consideration that in many ways Plymouth retains its history as an agricultural town. I'm going to agree with much of what has been said, and I certainly do not think that 10 days is sufficient. And I think that what Mr. Brindisi quoted as having a limit of how high the fine can go is a good idea, which this particular bylaw does not include a limit. The fine can't go over a certain amount, so I think that would be a great addition. But one of my concerns that hasn't been mentioned is this bylaw is going to be very expensive. The salaries and benefits of the enforcement officer, their designated agents, plus the administrative and legal costs will add a tax burden to our town. I'm not sure that this is necessary to hire a new person. We do have a Board of Health already that covers many of these issues. If it's a health problem, the Board of Health certainly can address it. Another thing is that nuisance bylaws can create very bad blood between neighbors. The chairman of our Precinct 16 was supervisor in a town in New York. He said this was the most difficult of all the bylaws that the town had to deal with. So I think that this will cause a lot of problems at the administrative level in our town. In addition, the fact that there's no appeal process, I think, is very, very important. This is from the town of Upton, Massachusetts. It says, any person aggrieved by an order of the building commissioner, which is like their enforcement officer, may request a hearing before the Board of Selectmen. And there's more to that section, but the appeal is built in. If you cannot appeal this, and maybe your neighbor just doesn't like you or has mad because your kid is someone they don't like or whatever it is, which happens, then you have no appeal. And it seems to me that if someone brings
30
a
seconds.
complaint against me, I should have some authority to go to that can intervene between me and having to hire lawyers, et cetera. Thanks so much.
Nancy Davis, Precinct 2, followed by Karen Keene, Precinct 14. Nancy Davis. With this Plymouth's Fall Annual Town Meeting coming to you live, Nancy Davis.
Hi, Nancy Davis, Precinct 2. I think this is an egregious overreach of power by others, and what I mean by that is it's sort of fascist in that, you know, we look at like places where things go really bad, which I don't need to mention, but like World War II. But anyway, tattling on others and, you know, too broadly overreaching blight and to things that are like unpleasant. Frankly, I think it goes way beyond, as everyone else has said, and also it brings a lot of power to others in terms of what people do on their own property, which is sort of socialist. And this is assuming that, you know, somebody who in a place is doing well, it's easy to judge others, but, you know, to do tree work and all that other stuff, if you're, you know, just barely paying your mortgage because you've lost your job, the example of the, your folks are in a, you know, a home or whatever, there are so many instances in life where life doesn't go well for others, okay? So we're taking a big judgment here. If you're sitting pretty and you've never had a real problem in your life, it's easy to judge others. But I think this just goes way too far above and beyond, and it should be rewritten for commercial properties and to focus on the graffiti issue, and if there are properties that are problematic, you know, address those with lawyers and whatnot. But it's too far overreaching, and I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. Nancy Davis, point of order, Mr. Brewster. Wrestling Brewster moves the question. That is a motion to close debate. It is not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. We can see, in addition to those who are standing, the town manager wished to address town meeting once again. And at this time, we will now go forward on the motion to close debate. When the light goes on, you can vote now. Town meeting members are voting on whether or not to close debate. It is a procedural motion. It requires a 2/3 vote. If it passes, we will go to the main motion as amended and vote that. If it does not pass, we will continue with the people who have requested an opportunity to speak at town meeting on this matter. This is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School, Saturday, October 21st. We're in the first part of the morning session. We have 102 say yes, 33 say no, 1 abstentions. The motion carries. And therefore, debate is closed on Article 5 as amended, and town meeting will now be voting on the main motion as amended under Article 5. When the light goes on, after we scroll through the precincts on the motion to close debate, we have 18 precincts. Again, green is yes, red is no, yellow abstention. We now have all 18. The light can now go on for the voting, and when the light does go on, town meeting members will begin to vote on the main motion as amended on Article 5. They have your handsets, you have your V-voter, and when OTI turns on the lights, we will vote on the main motion as amended. You can vote now. This is a majority vote. All of our votes are done electronically, and therefore they are roll call votes. After we complete this, we will move on in the warrant chronologically, and town meeting will be recessing at approximately 10 a.m., and that would be the morning recess. And following the morning recess, we will resume where we've left off in the warrant of the fall annual town meeting being held at Plymouth North High School on Aubrey Street in Plymouth. The voting has concluded. 24 say yes, 114 say no, 1 abstention. The motion does not carry, and we will scroll through the precincts so that you can make sure that your vote was correctly tabulated. And when we resume, Article 1 is withdrawn. We're continuing to see the precincts, and as we do, I will read into the record Article 2A. Article 2A, excuse me, a supplemental budget, general fund, and we first have a motion for Subcommittee Report A. Mr. Neerman moves that the town vote to amend the votes taken under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report A, by increasing the original appropriation by $202,686, items 1 to 16, for the purposes as listed in the Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 24 Budget Amendments Report attached to these motions, and further to increase by $202,686 the amount raised from the 2024 tax levy. Stephen Neerman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee voted to vote separately on line number 3, COPC support, and voted 7 to 6 with 0 abstentions to approve line 3, which will increase the fiscal 24 general fund operating budget by $25,000 as detailed in the table below. And subsequently, the Advisory and Finance Committee voted a unanimous 13-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions for all other items in 2A, which approval of this article will increase the fiscal 24 general operating fund budget by $1,013,201 as detailed in the following table.
Thank you. We will now begin first with a motion to amend. George McKay, Precinct 8, moves to amend Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A, by decreasing line 14, Department of Inspectional Services, all other expenses, by the sum of $125,000. George McKay, please come forward if you wish to be heard on your motion to amend. This is a majority vote. Mr. McKay.
Yeah, I think it's simple. We just voted down Article 5, and that amount of money was allocated for Article 5. So it seems like that should be taken out.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, we're going to proceed with the vote on the motion to amend from George McKay. When the light goes on, you'll be able to vote on the motion to amend. You can vote now. You're voting on the motion to amend to decrease by $125,000. If the motion passes, the new motion as amended would be $77,686. Right now, the main motion is $202,686. We are voting on a motion to amend under Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A, and we have 162 town meeting members who are elected. We have over 130 voting, and when the voting completes, we will determine whether the motion to amend passes or fails. Once the light is off, voting has ended. 123 say yes, no 13, 3 abstentions. The motion carries. We now have a main motion as amended in the amount of $77,686. Mr. Costello moves to divide the main motion as to Town Manager Personal Services, line 3, salaries, COPC support, $25,000. Alan Costello, Precinct 10, good morning. Mr. Costello, do you care to be heard on line 3?
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, town meeting. Yes, I'd like to put this motion to divide this question forward so that we can discuss this $25,000 independently of
Mr. Costello, I'm allowing your motion, so
Oh, okay, very good.
it's divided. Do you care to be heard now on the 25,000?
Oh, yes, okay, then I'll change up my argument. My argument is that this $25,000, in my opinion, is not needed at this time. I understand the logic behind it. There's a hope by the town administration to take this $25,000, put it with $25,000 from the CPC, and create a decent salary for a future full-time position, an initiative. I think there's more money that's going to be involved when you start to take into account benefits and retirement. But the use of this clerical person would be to take care of the clerical support for two committees, CPC and COPC. And the COPC side of it is what I'd like to speak to. As a former clerk of COPC and a chairman for a couple of years, I understand to a pretty good degree the workload. We meet once a month, and historically we meet for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on the workload. This particular $25,000 plus is asking to have a clerical person in town hall work for 80 to 90 hours a month to prepare for this 1 hour, 1.5 hour meeting. Doesn't make a great deal of fiscal sense. Form of government that we have, we all volunteer, and everyone in this room enjoys it. So there's a certain amount of work that's involved in it. There might be a couple of hours over the course of a month that a clerk or a chairman has to put together an agenda or minutes or prepare for the upcoming meeting. But that's why we signed up. That's why we're all here today. So to have a position in town hall that's going to work for 90 hours to get ready for a 1 hour meeting, in my opinion, is the definition of fiscal irresponsibility. And I ask that at this time, we vote this $25,000 out of Subcommittee A. I have no problem revisiting it as years go by, but as we stand today, it's not needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. So just to clarify for town meeting, Mr. Costello, I am treating your presentation as a motion to amend under Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A, by decreasing line 3, which is Town Manager Personal Services, salaries, COPC support, by the sum of $25,000. If this approves, it would be $52,686. That is a motion to amend that we are now debating, and therefore I'd ask that all the speakers who have risen to be heard keep your debate on this motion to amend. Once we vote the motion to amend, we will then come back to the main motion. So we're going to continue with Patricia McCarthy, Precinct 18, followed by Matthew Tavares, Precinct 2. Patricia McCarthy.
I'm speaking in opposition to this motion to amend. And in speaking with the town manager, I think there's clarification as to what the $25,000 position could be used for, not just for the COPC, but if there's no work for the COPC done, there's plenty of other work for other committees, and that it could be, my understanding, a universal use of the monies in that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Tavares, Precinct 2, followed by David Golden, Precinct 7. Mr. Tavares, welcome.
I'm fine with Mr. Brewster going. I think he's only spoken on moving.
Mr. Brewster, did you rise before Mr. Tavares?
Yeah, I think he did.
About an hour and a half before. But
Okay, Mr. Brewster, we're going to go with you. Go ahead.
Russell Brewster, Chair of Precinct 15. With all due respect to Mr. Costello, this was brought before the COPC, and we had a long debate about it. And we actually had to have 2 meetings about it because the members were conflicted. One of the questions that I asked at both meetings is, What do we want COPC to be? We want COPC to be a body that collects information, brings it back to our members like we have been doing for years. Okay, we don't really need an administrative assistant. If we want COPC to be the body that it can be, the body that's looking after the town in between town meetings, having meetings with the selectmen and holding the selectmen up to their high standards and speaking for the town. I've never been more impressed with COPC than when we were doing the redistricting. The town came to COPC and said, we need to have a voice. We were that voice. So COPC in the last meeting voted for this, to approve this, and to recommend the town meeting went forward with this. This is something that I think that COPC needs. If you'd like, I'd love for the town manager to talk about the position and how it'd be multi-use, but this is something that the COPC has recommended. Thank you.
Wrestling Brewster, Precinct 15. Matthew Tavares, Precinct 7. David Golden, Precinct... Matthew Tavares, Precinct 2.
Yeah.
David Golden, Precinct 7.
Correct.
Mr. Tavares.
Matt Tavares, Precinct 2, Chair of Precinct 2 and Vice Chair of the COPC. This was definitely something we spoke about over 2 meetings, as Mr. Brewster said. And just through that course of 2 meetings, I actually changed my mind on this and voted to support this position. There's a lot of information that this body needs to receive, and there are a lot of questions that we have. We do funnel those through our chairs, but it would also be great for the Committee of Precinct Chairs to have someone that could funnel those questions through Town Hall quickly and efficiently. Right now, we have, sitting on the Committee of Precinct Chairs, we could get our answers in the same way individual town meeting members do. And I'd like to see someone there that can actually facilitate that, get those questions a little bit quicker. Most of us, are also working jobs during the day, so we're bouncing town phone calls with our work. This would be a huge benefit to the chair, and I'm sure the chair of the COPC will speak to this. As you've all seen, our current chair has done a great job in her tenure disseminating information to us all. That is no easy task, and I would like her to speak to the amount of time that she does spend each week in preparation for the COPC meetings, but also how much time she spends in the months and weeks leading up to town meeting. And I think that the position would be filled a full 20 hours, which is half of what we're looking for out of this position each month. You should also know that COPC has the ability to have 2 meetings a month, and we have actually enacted that at several times, and I can see that happening more because we are having subcommittees also being formed now, and this position would also support those subcommittees, of which Mr. Costello is a chair of a subcommittee. I think he's going to like the help. That being said, I urge you all to support this. It's going to help this body become more efficient, and I think that is going to be great moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David Golden, Precinct 7, followed by Dale Weber, Precinct 3. Mr. Golden.
Mr. Moderator, I believe my colleagues, Ms. Hall and Ms. Holmes, rose before I did.
She's already spoken once.
Okay.
You have not.
Very good. Thank
Welcome.
you. Dave Golden, Chair of Precinct 7. I'd like to endorse what Mr. Brewster and Mr. Tavares said before me. The COPC is striving to become a more relevant body for the town. We're really trying to become the continuity of the legislative branch between our town meetings. Just because we are only meeting once a month now, and in fact we have met twice in the month of September, and have planned additional meetings for subsequent months, doesn't mean we can't do more meetings even beyond that in the future. We really want to make sure that we're creating a space for information for the residents of Plymouth and for all of you in this room, so that you're informed as to what's going on across town in between town meetings. So I encourage you all to vote in favor of the $25,000, and I believe procedurally no on the motion to amend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale Weber, Precinct 3.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dale Weber, Precinct 3, where it all began. I just wanted to talk for a moment about my opposition to the article and my support of Mr. Costello's motion to amend. And my opposition goes back to the last ballot question where we were discussing the adoption of the new charter. And the constituents that I heard from during that process were telegraphing to me that they were voting no on the new charter based on the fact that it compared the Committee of Precinct Chairs, of which I'm a member, I forgot to mention that. I represent Precinct 3 on the COPC. But people were, and the new charter was putting forward the perception, and perception is everything, that the COPC was equal in stature to the Select Board. I refused to acknowledge that. My opposition to the charter question was based on the COPC as a group of volunteers trying to bring more importance to themselves. They need more work in that area, just for my opinion. And the bottom line is this motion right here, this article, speaks to poking a stick in the eye of the voters that turned down the charter because they did not want the COPC to think of themselves as equal in stature to the Select Board. And yet here we are saying through town meeting, not through a ballot question, that we want to escalate the COPC and bring them up the ladder to say, we are worthy of administrative assistance to the tune of $25,000. I don't think the COPC is ready for that, and I'm speaking to that as a member of the COPC, happy to volunteer my efforts to try to make Plymouth a better place. I support Mr. Costello's amendment, and I urge everyone else to as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Virginia Davis, Precinct 4, followed by Nathan Siegel, Precinct 14. Virginia Davis.
Virginia Davis, Precinct 4. I'm going to be voting against this, but primarily I'm in complete support of the COPC. I listen to it and most of the time. But the reason I'm against this is I think it serves a wonderful purpose as a place for these precinct chairs to go and to learn about what they have to bring back to us as regular town meeting members. I look at it as an educational forum, a really important one. But all these subcommittees and things, you know, just function on what you're doing. Teach the people who live in your precinct and your caucus members to be informed about what is happening in this town. I think we make things too complicated and too complex. So get back to the basics. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Nathan Siegel, Precinct 14, followed by Claire Martinari, Precinct 4. Mr. Siegel, proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Nate Siegel, Precinct 14. I will be voting against the amendment. I want to commend the COPC for their ambition. I think it's great to see what they're doing. I think we all know we have a participation problem in this community, and I think, like I said, I commend the members and the chairs for stepping up to the plate, for having ambition and having a vision of wanting to do more to inform citizens, bring them into the fold, you know, fill that gap in between town meetings, as several other speakers have referenced. I think it's a relatively small amount of money, and if it gives people that are already stepping up to the plate to be not only town meeting members, but to be precinct chairs, I think if it gives them some support, allows them some breathing room to do a little bit more, I think that's great. I mean, I agree, I understand the sort of cross currents between the charter and some of these issues between different branches of the government, but I think that this is a step in the right direction. So I'll be voting against the amendment and for the main motion. I hope you'll do the same. Thank you.
Claire Montanari, Precinct 4. I do not approve of any payment being issued for any of the volunteer activity that we undertake as a town meeting member. I was clerk of the COPC for several years, took a lot of notes, copious minutes, and I just enjoyed it. It was a review of what happened at that particular COPC meeting. And to turn around and offer any reimbursement, we are all volunteers. We don't have to do this unless we enjoy doing this, so please vote against it.
Jeffrey DeLapp, Precinct 13. I move the question.
Can't hear you.
Microphone to be corrected. There it is. Thank you. Requires a 2/3 vote. And at this time, we're going to vote on whether to close debate on this motion and to decrease the main motion by $25,000. You can vote now. It's a motion to amend to decrease by $25,000. It's a motion to close debate on this. Motion to close debate on whether or not we're going to move forward on the motion to amend. So you're voting on whether to close debate on this particular motion to amend. And then after, depending on this, we would proceed with debate on the main motion. If this passes, if it fails, we'll continue on the motion to. Many members are voting. We have 162 elected. 88 say yes, close debate. 48 say no. 2 abstentions. The motion does carry. Debate and call. Point of order, Mr. Golden.
I think there's some confusion as to what a yes or no vote would do on this motion to amend. Can you just clarify that?
Yes. A yes vote will reduce the amount. A yes vote will reduce the main motion by $25,000. Currently, the main motion as amended is at $77,686. A yes vote on a motion to amend offered by Mr. Costello would reduce that amount by $25,000. Betsy Hall, Precinct 16.
Betsy Hall, I have to agree with Claire Montanari. I was on the Committee of Precinct Chairs. She did a fabulous job with the minutes. And I appreciate all the work that all the people do on the COPC. I am going to vote no on this particular article because I think that this is too many hours per week and too much money. And I'm understanding that it might be someone could correct me, but 20 hours a week means you get benefits. If you could work 19 3/4, no. So this will not bring benefits, and it will not bring retirement unless this person is also hired through the CPC. Then they will get benefits and salary. No, there'll be 2 separate jobs, and they will not get benefits and salary. Thank you for that. And I would like to request that in the future, when an employee is recommended for a future hiring, that the salary, benefits, and retirement are all included in our books, not just the salary itself. Thank you.
Edward Russell, Precinct 16, followed by Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9. Mr. Russell.
I'd like to clarify what Betsy just said, or get some clarification on it. I thought we were going to hire one employee that would serve both purposes. If I'm incorrect, I need to know that.
Is there someone who cares to respond? Dirk Brindisi is our town manager. Welcome, Dirk Brindisi. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So to answer that question, this is a part-time position, so it would be non-benefit eligible at 19 hours per week.
Further discussion, Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9. We are debating Article 2A, and we have a motion to amend. Catherine Holmes.
Hi, everyone. So I am the chairwoman for the COPC. I've served for over 3 years now, and I will say, in support of what Matt said, There was a lot of debate at COPC on this article and whether we should have administrative support. And we went back and forth. We had 2 meetings where we covered it in detail. We actually did have a meeting on Thursday. Unfortunately, Mr. Costello was not at that meeting. And so we did vote in full favor of this article with nobody opposing it. There was 1 abstention, I believe, if I remember correctly. So the reason why, though, I want to give you some understanding of why we came to that. All of the discussion that people have said is true. We were like, why, do we need this? Should we be hiring someone to do administrative support? But the reality is this. The evolution of the COPC is now in a place where we're trying to provide what is in our existing charter, not in the new charter. We're trying to put process and subcommittees or actions within the COPC that are part of our existing charter. In the current charter, the chair people are responsible for reviewing our current bylaws. They are responsible for legislative oversight. These are 2 huge tasks. And what that means to the town meeting and to the residents of Plymouth is that we're responsible to make sure that the articles that we pass, the funding that we said we were going to use, actually went toward those articles, and what is the current status of them. Are we over budget? Are we under budget? If we are, where did the money go? Did the project get completed? We have learned over the years that sometimes we pass things in town meeting and those things don't move forward. So legislative oversight is critical so that when we spend our Saturdays and sometimes even our Mondays following, and we say that we want the town management to move forward with these specific things, it's up to us to be accountable to ensure that those things happened. That's part of our existing role in our existing charter. The COPC is not looking for more power. So there's a real misunderstanding there. What the COPC is looking to do is be accountable for what is currently in our current charter. And so I was on the fence about this because I currently am doing the job. And I will tell you that if you want to do the job well, you have to invest the time. Now, we are volunteers, and that's correct. I'm not getting paid for this.
30 seconds.
But neither is the FinCom, and the FinCom has an administrative support, and they are volunteers. So I work right now in a full-time job. It takes me, and I told on COP Thursday night, it brings me great joy to be the chairperson of the COPC. I spend about 20 plus hours a week, depending on where we're at, in either the fall or the spring town meeting. Right now, just organizing COPC. I take a lot of calls from our residents. I take a lot of calls from town meeting members, and I love every one of them. Can I get a few more minutes, please?
How much?
Can I get like 1 more minute?
1 more minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I take a lot of calls from residents and a lot of calls from members. And I'll just give you a snapshot of an example, and I shared this in our meeting. Right before our COPC meeting that we had, on the Wednesday of the COPC, I probably got about 15 calls from town meeting members and residents talking about things that they wanted to discuss. The NIP ban it depends on what's happening on the articles. NIP is very, very, very popular. There's a lot of opposition and a lot of people for it. Depending on what is before us, I get more calls. On the following day, on the day of the COPC meeting, I had 25 calls. If we had an administrator, we would be able to have her field some of that information so she could be doing the agendas, organizing the chair, organizing the speakers, making sure that PAC TV is ready to go. Also, we've changed our strategy. We now are fully committed to legislative oversight, and we're fully committed to bylaw overview. That is going to require resources from the town in order to give us the information. We don't get that information, we are not going to be effective in our job. I ask you to support the position and to vote no on the motion. Thank you.
Carl Mason, Precinct 18. Welcome, Carl Mason.
I'm glad to hear that the COPC supports us. It was my understanding, though, that the idea didn't actually come from them. It came from town manager. I think the genesis of the idea of hiring this new employee was from the CPC, which decided that they needed a full-time or part-time employee to support their work, that is the Community Preservation Committee. So I was wondering if Mr. Brindisi could comment, now that it seems to be a part-time job, what's changed? It was my understanding that this employee was going to work for both the CPC and the COPC.
Thank you. Mr. Bernese?
Great question. So let's not conflate the two issues. This discussion is about whether or not this body wants to support the $25,000 to provide 19 hours per week to COPC for their endeavors. CPC has already voted in the past to support a part-time position as well. From a efficiency standpoint, it would make sense to leverage both sources of funds and to hire one full-time staff person in order to support these two major bodies.
Thank you. Mr. Mason?
So just to be clear, this is a full-time or a part-time position that we're funding?
I believe he previously said it's part-time. Mr. Brindisi?
If both sources of funds are leveraged together, it would be ultimately a full-time position that would support these two major bodies. The question on the floor is whether you're going to support the $25,000 for COPC.
Thank you. Albert DiNardo, Precinct 17. We're debating a motion to amend to decrease by $25,000. Mr. DiNardo.
Can I, Mr. Moderator, I just want to say I'm in support of this. I know there's this talk between the select board and the branches of government, but there's supposed to be an ebb and flow between the branches of government. With due respect to the select board, if we all recall, there was an issue with the woodlot. When one part of the government runs amok, it's up to our branch of government to fill that void. We saw that with the woodlot issue. A poll of this body was taken, 80-something% of this body was against that. As the citizens voted, it mimicked what we voted. Later, there was legislation offered by COPC against that issue. So I'm in support of this to enhance our authority. We have that authority right now, and to galvanize that as Plymouth continues to deal with these Route 128 issues. Thank you.
Alan Costello, Precinct 10. Mr. Costello.
Yes, just quickly, I'd like to just counterpoint a few points that were made by others. I am presently a member of the Committee of Precinct Chairs. I have been a long-time member, and I really enjoy it. I've enjoyed the work as a clerk, as the chair, and now as a member. I think the Committee of Precinct Chairs has a role in town, but at this stage, we don't always fulfill that. To the point of legislative oversight, we did. To our credit, to your credit, you asked us to do this. We have put together a legislative oversight committee. The committee is in its infancy, but we had an unofficial straw vote on this particular question at our last meeting, and it was unanimous no, 11 no's. No one was in favor of it. We felt that we were there as volunteers. We felt that we were capable of doing the work, and especially didn't want to ask the taxpayers to send down $25,000 to have a clerical person take notes for us. That's one thing. The present COPC, as it stands today in the last calendar year, has missed 25% of our meetings. So you'll be asking this part-time or / full-time person, depending on who you talk to, or if you read the book, you'll be asking them to sit in town hall for 80 hours a month. That's 960 hours a year for 9 meetings, 9 1.5-hour meetings per year. It's bizarre, and I personally can't go home to my neighborhood and tell my neighbors I'm asking for another $25,000 because I don't want to take notes. I'd urge you, and I'd like the moderator to explain this because there has been some confusion. A yes vote would be to delete the $25,000 from the line item. A no vote would, I assume, keep it in there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Christopher Hull, Precinct 14, moves to close debate. It is not debatable. I don't have anybody else in the queue. We do have a couple of people standing here. It is a 2/3 vote as to whether to close debate on Mr. Costello's motion to amend. When the light goes on, you can vote on whether to close debate. You can vote now. Town meeting members are voting on whether to close debate on the motion to amend. Town meeting will continue following this procedural vote to close debate on the motion to amend. We have 162 town meeting members. 137 have voted on this. When the light goes off, we will see the results of the vote. It requires a 2/3 vote to close debate. And now 108 say yes, no 29, 0 abstentions. We are now closing debate on the motion to amend. Again, the motion to amend is to amend Article 2A, Subcommittee A, by decreasing line 3, Town Manager Personal Services Salary COPC support, by the sum of $25,000. And the effect, if it is a yes, would reduce the main motion to $52,686. A no would leave it at $77,686. We are now voting on the motion to amend. When the light goes on, you can vote. It is a majority vote on the motion to amend. Town meeting is now voting on a motion to amend. Following this vote, we will go back to the main motion as amended. And town meeting is now voting on this motion to amend. We are in the morning session of Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting, and we are continuing through the warrant. Town meeting is voting. We have 139 who have cast a vote out of 162, and when the light goes off, the voting has ended. 65 say yes, 73 say no, 2 abstentions. The motion does not carry. The main motion is still $77,686. As we scroll through the precincts, is there any further discussion on the main motion from the Advisory and Finance Committee as amended? And it was amended earlier by Mr. McKay's motion to decrease by $125,000. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? If not, we're going to go now to the main motion under Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A, and the quantum of vote will be a majority. When the light goes on, we will vote on the main motion on Article 2A. You can now vote. Article 2A, Subcommittee Report A, the amount is $77,686. Town meeting members are now voting on the main motion. And following that, we will continue with the warrant. We have 162 elected town meeting members in 18 precincts. This is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School, located on Obery Street in Plymouth on Saturday, October 21st. We are in the morning session of our fall annual town meeting. Voting has concluded. 18 say yes, 20 say no, 2 abstentions. The motion carries. And as we scroll through the precincts, I will read into the record the motion under Subcommittee Report B. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote to amend the votes taken under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report B, by decreasing the original appropriation by $142,331, items 17 to 31, for the purposes as listed in the Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 24 Budget Amendments Report attached to these motions, and further to decrease by $142,331 the amount raised from the 2024 tax levy. Mr. Neerman.
Wow. Okay. I voted yes in that last article and it didn't register. That was really worth it.
Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9, voted yes on that Article 2A Subcommittee Report A main motion. Thank you. Mr. Neerman,
Yes.
on Subcommittee Report B.
B, yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 2B by a unanimous vote of 13 for, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Approval of this article will increase the fiscal 24 enterprise fund operating budget by $656,000 as detailed in the following table.
Thank you, Stephen Neerman, Advisory and Finance Committee. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're going to go to the vote. When the light goes on, we'll be voting on Subcommittee Report B under Article 2A. Town meeting will be voting electronically, in person using a clicker. B voter for remote, you're voting now. 2A, Subcommittee Report B. 162 town meeting members. We see the votes coming in at the bottom of the screen. Town meeting members are voting quickly during this 20 seconds that's available for the vote. Upon the completion of the voting, we will announce the totals and we'll move to Subcommittee Report C. Town meeting is voting on 2A Subcommittee Report B, offered by the Advisory and Finance Committee, a main motion. When the light goes off, the voting will conclude. The voting has ended on this. 137 yes, no, 2, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. As we look at the precincts and how the precincts voted, I will read the next motion into the record. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote to amend the votes taken under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report C, by increasing the original appropriation by $240,735, items 32 to 43, for the purposes as listed in the Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 24 Budget Amendments Report. Attach these motions, and further to increase by $240,735 the amount raised from the 2024 tax levy. Mr. Neerman.
Yes, we voted to approve unanimously all sub-report A.
Further discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote, and you can begin voting when the light goes on. And we are voting on now Subcommittee Report C under 2A. This is a majority vote on this. Town meeting will be voting when the light goes on. Vote now. You're voting on Article 2A, Subcommittee Report C. Town meeting members have the opportunity to vote either in person or remotely. We are having a hybrid Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting coming to you live from Plymouth North High School on Aubrey Street. This is October 21st, the live cable cast of your Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting. We have 134 town meeting members who are voting. When the light goes off, the voting will conclude. 136 town meeting members have voted, and we are on 2A, Subcommittee Report C, and the vote is as follows: 135 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention. The motion carries. I will read the next motion into the record. You can look at your precinct votes. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote to amend the votes taken under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report D, by increasing the original appropriation by $670,777, items 44 to 48, for the purposes as listed in the Articles 2A and 2B Fiscal 24 Budget Amendments Report. Attach these motions, and further to increase by $670,777 the amount raised from the 2024 tax levy. Mr. Neerman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And again, the Advisory and Finance Committee voted unanimous, 13 for, 0 against, 0 abstentions, to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee Report D.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we're going to call for a vote. When the light goes on, you can begin voting on Subcommittee Report D. We are supported by OTI Technology. You can vote now. 2A, Subcommittee Report D. We are in our morning session of the Fall Annual Town Meeting. This is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School. Town meeting members have been debating articles. Town meeting has the opportunity to proceed in the warrant, also to change the order of articles, which was done earlier. Town meeting can also move to reconsider an article once it's been voted if a member on the prevailing side wishes to move to reconsider. 162 town meeting members, 135 have voted. When the light goes off, the voting will end. We will have the totals for 2A Subcommittee Report D, and the totals are as follows: 136 yes, it is unanimous, no voting, and no abstentions. The total of 136, unanimous. I will now read into the record Subcommittee Report E. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote to amend the votes taken under Article 7A, Subcommittee Report E, by increasing the original appropriation by $66,334, items 49 to 66, for the purposes as listed in the Articles 2A and 2B, Fiscal 24 Budget Amendments Report attached to these motions, and further to increase by $66,334 the amount raised in the 2024 tax levy. Mr. Neerman.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. And again, the Advisory and Finance Committee voted unanimous 13-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee Report E.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. When the light goes on, you can begin voting. We are voting on Article 2A, Subcommittee Report E. Town meeting can vote now. You're voting, and following this, we'll be taking our morning recess, which will be for 15 minutes. We are completing all of the action under Article 2A. We've had multiple votes on the subcommittee reports. We are now in Subcommittee Report E, and this will conclude all of the motions being presented in Article 2A. This is Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting. It is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School. We'll be recessing for approximately 15 minutes, and thereafter we will return. And I did, at this point, have the vote, and we have 131 voting yes, no 3, abstain 0, and it carries. And we're going to scroll through the precincts. And at this time, I want to speak to the people who are on remote. I have a number of people who care to be speaking. Some of them are here in person. It says speak on the motion. No, they're voting too early. Okay. And a number of them are people who are here. So again, wait until the light goes on before you vote. At this time, we're going to go into our morning recess at 9:57 for 15 minutes. Thank you. Good morning and welcome back from our morning recess. This is Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting. It's coming to you live from Plymouth North High School on Saturday, October 21st. We are resuming at 10:12 a.m. We have completed the morning recess, and I'd like to announce that once again we are having the fall hometown cleanup. It is scheduled for Saturday, November 4th. Volunteers are needed. Join an existing group, create your own, or go out solo to help clean out a neighborhood, park, or roadway that needs some attention. You can sign up at Town Hall. You can pick up purple bags that are provided. Participate in the Plymouth Hometown Cleanup on November 4th. Leave filled purple bags at your indicated drop location, preferably along the main road. DPW will pick up the bags from drop locations. For questions, see Patrick Farah, Town Hall, 508-322-3374, farah@plymouth-ma.gov. And that is, once again, the all-day Saturday, November 4th, rain or shine, 2023 Plymouth Hometown Cleanup. And again, as mentioned earlier, thank you, Evelyn Strawn, for your time on the Advisory Finance Committee and also on the Open Space Committee, which is bringing this notice to us. Also like to thank those who participated in the opening ceremony, the Plymouth Fire Honor Guard, sophomore Plymouth North High School student Allie Chamberlain, and Father Joseph Rake of St. Peter's Church. Also like to thank the duty officer Edward Fine, who is here this morning at town meeting, and we wish to recognize PAC TV. They are cable casting this town meeting live on Comcast 15 and Verizon 47 and on PAC TV's streaming channel, pactv.org/live. I'd like to thank David Antoine, Keith Hughes, Teresa Landry, Aaron Matinzi, David Maybrook, Mark McKinley, Chris Quinn, Julie Thompson, and Matt Umbriana. Thank you to Alan McLean, who is providing the audiovisual equipment for this section of town meeting, and Performing Arts Center manager Kevin Johnson. This facility is provided by the Plymouth School District for our use today. We'd like special thanks to Dr. Christopher Campbell for his support in the organization of this event. Thank you to Judy Kendall and Jill Davin for the behind-the-scenes organization of this meeting today. We thank the custodial staff and the entire custodial staff team at Plymouth North High School for the setup and the cleaning. That includes head custodian Sean Murray, O'Brien Allen, Jamie Wood, Jesse Reardon, and Jack Coleman. We also thank to Tracy Dickerson, Susan Ketterling, Hope Lyons, Sue Gavin. They are food service providers at Plymouth North High School. They're providing lunch for this fall annual town meeting midday. Also, thank you to the Plymouth School Music Association for providing refreshments this morning. And at this time, we are going to continue with the warrant, and we have completed Article 2A. We are now moving to Article 2B. The motions under Article 2B, Supplemental Budget Enterprise Fund, Subcommittee Report G, Water Budget. Mr. Neerman moves to amend the votes taken under Article 7B by increasing the amount appropriated for the water budget, other expenditures, line 72, by $100,000. As detailed below and on the attached Articles 2A and 2B fiscal 24 budget amendments report, and further increase the amount raised by water receipts by $100,000 to fund the Water Enterprise Fund. Mr. Neerman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 2B, Subcommittee Report G. Approval of this article will increase the fiscal year 24 Enterprise Fund operating budget by $656,000 as detailed in the following table.
Further discussion on Article 2B, Subcommittee Report G. Seeing none, we are going to go to the vote. But first, before we go to the vote, I'm going to call on Assistant Town Moderator Nicole Manfredi. Nicole Manfredi.
So it appears that folks are anxious to vote, and when you, as an in-person voter, vote early, it comes through our system as a request to speak. So 2 motions ago, there were 5 people, and then the following motion, there were 9. So you really have to make sure that wait till that green light is on before you vote, because the system functions differently if you don't. Thanks.
Thank you. And in fact, your vote will not be counted if you vote too early, and they have to chase you down with OTI. So in any event, any further discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote on 2B, Subcommittee Report G, Water Budget. The light is on. You can now vote. 1 is a yes, 2 is a no, 3 is abstention. A yes vote will approve the main motion from the Advisory and Finance Committee. A no vote would not approve it. We're continuing with the warrant for the fall annual town meeting. It is coming to you live on Saturday, October 21st. We are in the second half of our morning session. At midday, we will recess for a lunch recess, and town meeting will continue after that into the afternoon. We have 162 town meeting members. We have the vote. 133 say yes, 2 say no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. As we scroll through the precincts so you can see your vote, I will read into the record the next motion. And Mr. Neerman moves to amend the votes taken under Article C by 7C by increasing the amount appropriated for sewer budget, other expenditures, line number 76 by $556,000 as detailed below and on the attached Articles 2A and 2B fiscal 24 budget amendments report, and further to increase the amount raised by sewer receipts by $556,000 to fund the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Mr. Lynch, a point of order.
I believe last vote I voted yes. I could
You voted yes. Kevin Lynch voted yes. Thank you. Mr. Neerman, on the Article 2B Subcommittee Report G.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 2B unanimously by a 13-0 vote.
Further discussion on this article? Hearing none, we're going to go to the vote. When the light goes on, again, wait until the light goes on before you begin voting, so your vote will be captured by OTI technology. You can vote now. We're voting on Article 2B, Subcommittee Report G, Sewer Budget. A yes will approve the main motion, a no will not. We're going to continue in the warrant. Following this, this is voting in which we have 162 elected members, 140 are now voting. So we are moving up in terms of the number of town meeting members who are present and voting. 141 are voting. When it concludes, 142. And we're getting closer to the number of 143 of town meeting members. Voting has ended. The totals are 142 yes, 1 no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. You can see whether or not your vote was correctly tabulated. And as we do that, we're going to move to Article 3. Article 3, withdrawn. We then move to Article 4. Article 4 is capital recommendations. And although we have recommendations A1 through A12, we will have a main motion, and then we will separate out A3 and A4 and vote them separately, and then vote the remaining ones. Here's the main motion. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote appropriate the sum of $2,795,374 to pay costs of various capital projects as shown below, including all costs incidental or related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, $1,142,321 shall be transferred from free cash, and $268,053 shall be transferred from the Environmental Affairs Fund. $685,000 should be transferred from Article 9A11 2023 Annual Town Meeting Self-Contained Breathing Apparatus. $600,000 should be transferred from sewer retained earnings. $100,000 should be transferred from water retained earnings. Mr. Neerman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 4 capital appropriations by a vote of 13-4, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you. We're going to first vote on Article 4A3, which is to replace and equip pumping engine 5. Does anyone care to be heard on Article 4A3, replace and equip the pumping engine 5? And this was a request from a town meeting member to divide these items, and so we're treating them separately. I don't see anyone rising to speak to this. It looks like now we have somebody coming forward as we are considering Article 4A3. Please come forward. Yes.
George Brown, Precinct 7.
Good morning.
All of us here, I believe, are property owners. We have to pay insurance on our property and our homes, and it's necessary for the people that decide how much we're going to spend to know that the town has a good fire department and is fully accredited. In order to do that, we need to keep the equipment up to date. Please vote for this engine.
Thank you, and let's continue. That was George Brown. Yes.
And good morning. My name is Frank O'Brien, Precinct 11. I'd just like the fire chief to get up and talk for a few minutes about the replacement of this particular piece of equipment.
Thank you. A request from Frank O'Brien, town meeting member, asking our Plymouth Fire Chief Neil Foley to speak further on this. Good morning, Plymouth Fire Chief Neil Foley.
Good morning, Neil Foley, Fire Chief. Thank you for the question. So Engine 5 is actually a sister truck to our Engine 2, which we replaced at the last Springtown meeting. They were purchased at the same time. Though Engine 2 was more deserving of the replacement earlier than Engine 5, we knew we were going to be coming back to town meeting for this replacement as well. It's a 2008 pumper. Obviously, the wear and tear on that vehicle with over 1,000 runs on average per year, the road salt and other corrosion issues that we're experiencing with that engine. We have rehabbed this vehicle already. So we've already extended its life to be able to get to this point. What we're hoping is that even though our chief master mechanic has categorized this engine as being in poor condition at this point for a frontline piece, we believe that we're going to be able to do some mechanical work and some other cosmetic work and corrosion repair that'll extend its life out so that we can get at least a good 20 years completely out of the engine. Currently, right now, it's a 15-year-old engine. So we may be able to extend the life out another 5, maybe a few more years after that. We'll just see how the condition goes at this point. The engine that is going to replace this one is going to have increased capacity, both pumping and also the capacity to carry water. It's going to be more maneuverable. It's also going to bring the safety standards for crew safety and also for road safety in general for any other people on the road, as far as handling, braking, turning, and turning in particular is important, especially if anybody's from the Manaman area. You know, we have a lot of narrow dirt roads down that area where maneuverability of an emergency apparatus of that size is really important so that we can get where we need to be able to extend our hose lines or any other rescue equipment that we may carry upon it. We do carry a full array of equipment on this vehicle. It's not just a fire pumper. We also carry extrication equipment. We carry other rescue equipment. We carry detection equipment.
30 seconds.
And generally speaking, is a toolbox to be able to deal with any emergency that we come across. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil Foley, Plymouth Fire Chief, responding to Frank O'Brien, Precinct 11. Peter Neville, Precinct 10, followed by Carl Mason. Mr. Neville.
Just back to you, Chief. I'm wondering if you did any analysis on lease versus purchase, and whether or not the analysis included the accumulated costs for the maintenance that you experienced, obviously, since 2008 on the existing pumper. And I can't do the math, but I just wonder how that breaks out. And the other question, I guess, gets back to given the increase in fire protection systems residentially and commercially, some required by code, I wonder whether or not that has mitigated the standard that's alluded to by our other town meeting rep in terms of fire protection standards within general liability policies for homeowners and commercial properties.
Neil Foley, Plymouth Fire Chief, responding.
As far as the comparison between a lease and a purchase outright, I think that I would, we looked at this in the past, and I would defer this question to our finance director. Just to be able to take a quick stab at it, I don't believe that any analysis that we've done has shown that that would be a benefit at this time for the town of Plymouth. As far as the question as to fire suppression standards, what we adhere to and what we strive to is to increase and maintain our ISO, Insurance Service Organization rating, which is directly tied to the insurance costs for our homeowners insurance and other business insurance within the town. If we do not have a fleet that meets that standard, or we don't have enough coverage within certain areas within a certain amount of time, our rating would drop, and that would potentially raise our insurance rates as a result.
Thank you. Carl Mason, Precinct 18. Mr. Mason.
Chief Foley, I'd like to ask you a question about page 80 in our handbook. Talks a little bit about the sort of replacement schedule. On the bottom of the page, it's the italics paragraph that says, this replacement request aligns with the department's apparatus replacement practices, published national standards, etc. These standards state that apparatus should not exceed 15 years of service on the front line. Once an apparatus reaches this age, one alternative is for the apparatus to undergo a level 1 refurbishing in accordance with NFPA, etc. I fully agree with the comments regarding having a reliable and up-to-date fire response system, and I'm willing to pay for that. But I was wondering, what is the, what's the difference in cost between a refurbishment and a replacement, and why are we going for the replacement as opposed to refurbishment?
Neil Foley, Plymouth Fire Chief.
So this particular engine was refurbished in 2018. I don't believe I have the actual cost of what that was at that time. I can speak to our most recent refurbishment, and I believe we're at about 160,000 in its entirety. That included considerable amount of pump work for the fire pump, engine work, transmission work, and quite a bit of cosmetic repair to stave off any corrosion concerns that were associated with it. But it also it brought up to some of the safety standards that are currently now, as far as lighting and scene lighting and such. It's not going to increase any of its steerability and rollover capacity and stuff like that, but it does do quite a bit of work to extend the life of that engine. Now, how long do we get out of it? That really depends on its volume of calls and obviously use and abuse, essentially. But the cost is definitely going to be better because instead of getting a 15-year lifespan out of an engine and then turning over and going and purchasing a new one, we're able to extend that 15, like I said, to 15 to 20, possibly up to 25 years. Once you hit 25 years, any particular failure of that engine, it's up to me to take that out of service at that point. And we don't ever want to get to the point where I don't have any discretion on how we move forward with a piece of apparatus.
Thank you. Kevin Lynch, good morning.
Good morning. Kevin Lynch, Precinct 5. Chief, if you could, given that we're in New England and corrosion is something that it's always going to be there, just take a look at my car. What exactly does the fire department do to mitigate corrosion?
So the design of our current engines, that's a great question because I believe Plymouth was one of the first to actually get this done. There was different dips and what have you that was out there within the market, but there was no standard. It was always an add-on and an extra. The manufacturer that we purchase our engines from now, not these ones in 2008 or even our engine 1, but the newer engines that we purchase now are galvanized frame, which does resist corrosion on the frame. It's an aluminum body, but that's still, there are other components within that really there's no treatment that we can do, road salt, grime, the magnesium, that gets into the nooks and crannies, a lot of the mechanical moving pieces. There's really not much we can do with that at this point.
Okay, next question is, you said that this was about responding last 14 years, 1,200 incidents annually. A constituent of mine asked me how many of those 1,200 incidents were actually fires.
I'd have to look at the statistics, but I could speak to the fact that it's probably a 60-40, maybe a 70-30 split between medical and fire-related responses. But the complicated thing is that when you start pulling out what those medical calls are, it's not just simply somebody that's not feeling well. That medical call may include a car accident. It may include a fall from a great height. It may be an entrapment of some sort. So it's really tough to speak. But what I would say is that, for many years now, the fire department is not strictly a fire department. It's an all-hazards response department. So hazardous materials, car accidents, rescues. Unfortunately, these days, we're also training for active shooter events, terrorist type events, and many other things. So it's a multidiscipline job now. To categorize the fire department as just a fire department, I think it's just tradition at this point. We're an all-hazards department.
So things
30 seconds.
Things will be changing, and like you said, the label fire department, perhaps we need to look at not having a fire department, but something comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Any further discussion? If not, we're going to be voting on Article 4A3, replace and equip pumping engine 5. If there's no further discussion, we're going to vote, and we'll vote when the light is on. The light is on, you can vote now. You're voting on Article 4A3, and you have 20 seconds in which to vote. Town meeting members are voting. We have 162 town meeting members. We are in the morning session. We will continue with Article 4 after we finish voting on A3, which is replace and equip a pumping engine 5. Town meeting members are voting. We have 138 currently who have voted on this Article 4A3 out of 162. Once the light is off now, the voting has ended, and 138 say yes, 0 say no, 1 abstentions. It carries. And as we scroll through the precincts, we're going to move on next to Article 4A4, Town Wharf Extension. And we have a number of people coming forward. First, Brendan Brady. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. Did you want to read the article first, or am I free to go?
It's already been read into the record, and your time can start now.
Thank you. Brendan Brady, Precinct 10. I hope that our non-town meeting members have the opportunity to make their case on this, such as Paul Clintill, who was at our caucus meeting. But in the event that they can't, I just wanted to bullet real quick. It's a big boat. It's cool. I get it. We get a couple of grand per trip, and they want to do it 10 times next year instead of the 3, at least 10 times. And it sits on the wharf for 3 days at a time. We built that wharf for millions of dollars to support our local fishing economy, who has been a long-standing partner of this town, and now we're being asked to expand it for a new adventure. Makes sense. The problem is, and this is, I think Mr. Quinto went downtown and talked to local businesses, there's little evidence that the trips bring an appreciable difference to the tourist economy because it's all-inclusive, and there is evidence that it causes problems to the fishermen's ability to do their job. So we are being asked to pay for something that doesn't pay for itself or improve the factual economy that we have in place. But if it comes here 10 times next year, the fishing economy is choked for 30 days of their fishing season, which is about 20% of their peak operating time. Could any of us in this building do our job effectively with 20% less time available every year to do it? If the town has to have it, let ACL pay for it, not the residents and not the existing partner who's already supporting our economy.
Brendan Brady's with Precinct 10, Wrestling Brewster, Precinct 15, followed by Frank O'Brien, Precinct 11. Mr. Brewster.
Didn't know if the harbor master or the town manager wanted to present before we started asking.
Was there going to be a presentation on this? I didn't have a note of that. Chad Hunter is a harbor master. Welcome, Chad Hunter.
Thank you, Wrestling. Thank you, moderator. Chad Hunter, Plymouth Harbor Master. There is a very short presentation. I was able to get to a number of the precincts, but not all of them. So I just kind of want to go over the project from the beginning. And for those that I did get to, thank you for the time to discuss this article. And a lot of the questions that are in here are questions that I heard at the precinct meeting, so it was very helpful. So the extension itself, really what we're looking to do here is extend the working length of Town Wharf, the pier, from 220 feet to 295 feet by adding 65 feet of concrete floating dock and a gangway. There is, if my math seems funny, there is a 10-foot space between the two. So that brings us up to 295 feet. This is based on demand. So we're looking for an infrastructure investment, and it's based on demand that we've seen since a number of improvements in the harbor. We had dredging. We built this pier in 2017, had a maritime facility, a number of infrastructure improvements preparing for our 400th celebration. And in doing all of those projects, we've created an environment where we have a demand, which is great. It's great for the town of Plymouth. It's great for the harbor. This is a flourishing harbor, and we have that demand there, which is really great. The pier itself, we're not looking to do any modifications to the existing structure, because when we built it in 2017, we actually left a curb cut at the end for this purpose exactly. So we were thinking about this in 2017 as a possibility down the road to expand. This dockage actually provides the harbor with additional dockage capacity, but it's also very unique in the sense that the dock is a fixed structure. We have a 10-foot tide range, so any vessels tied to the dock, they go up and down with the tide 10 feet. Makes it difficult, especially at low tide conditions, to get from the pier down to the boat. The addition with this concrete floating dock, the dock actually goes up and down with the tide, so the boat alongside the dock actually stays static. So the boats and the float go up and down, which is unique. It's something that we currently don't have in the harbor. In the reason for being here at Fall Town Meeting, we have another project happening in the harbor. We were looking to save on mobilization costs because there's similar construction happening in the harbor this off season, this winter. And obviously the time of year we wanted it to be ready for next season. So I just put together a couple of pictures from this past season, kind of starting left to right. We had the Trinidad, which if you look real quickly, like when they first came in, everybody's like, why is the Mayflower moving? It wasn't the Mayflower, but looked really close to it. But they were here for a visit of 2 weeks, which I think these visiting tall ships, we had the Draken, the Lynx over the years. They're really great for local businesses. They draw people down to the harbor just to see what's going on. And it's always nice to have at least 1 or 2 visits by tall ships in the summer. The upper right-hand side, that's just a picture looking down over the docks. You get some commercial fishing vessels. The cruise ship is sort of in the backdrop, and some open space to load and offload, but just kind of speaks to how busy this area can be in the harbor. And then bottom right, you can see obviously the cruise ship's in port, and you can see how far that cruise ship does extend off the pier. And to zoom out, just so everybody understands where we are, because obviously I work in the harbor and I understand what we're talking about, but for those of you that don't come to the harbor all that often, this just kind of gives you the layout of where we are and where we're talking about extending this pier. So you have the maritime facility, which is also the state boat ramp on the upper left. You have Woods Seafood, which is a good point of reference because I think most people know where Woods is. So this pier is actually behind it. It's in that red shaded area. So we're going to zoom in here. So this is just a zoomed in view now. So now you're looking at the pier, which is the darker shade of gray. The floating dock is actually highlighted in green. So that's the extension that we're looking to do. And then the 3 kind of magenta rings, those are the winches for the lobstermen. So those are the areas that they will, put gear on their boats, bait, and haul in their lobsters. So in this case, we use the cruise ship as the design criteria for this extension because this is the largest ship that we'll have in the harbor. So we wanted to design this to be able to support that function, but that's not the only way this can be used. And the other part to this too, obviously where the ship was slid forward, was to prevent impacts to those winches. That was right from the start. We wanted to make sure that we did not impact the winch locations to allow lobstermen and commercial fishermen to be able to do their business even when the ship was in port. So the request we had originally was $664,500. That was based on an estimate from GEI. We did go out to bid, and we opened bids Thursday, and we had a low bid of $534,000. So that contractor with the low bid, if town meeting approves this, is ready to go. We're able to sign that contract with them and get this started, so we would be able to do it this season. Some of the savings on mobilization we did see, although it's not the same contractor we have for the boat ramp project. It's actually another project up in Marshfield One of the contractors that are doing that project are obviously have their equipment close and can easily come into Plymouth. So the estimate we had was $70,000 for mobilization. The low bid came in at $40,000. We saw some of the other mobilization costs at $84,000, so even more than our estimate. One of the questions that did come up was return on investment for this project, and we did look at the lifespan. So this is a concrete floating dock with steel piles, very low maintenance, and the lifespan of that is 25 to 30 years, depending on the use. It could last longer, it could last less, but we just use those as ballpark figures and sort of the revenue that we would have to derive each year to pay for this construction. So obviously at 25 years, it was $21,360 a year, and at 30, it was $17,800. So those are just some of the questions that had come up, and hopefully you guys have a good idea as to the project, what we're looking to do, and where it is. That is my goal in this presentation, and I'll be standing by if there are any further questions.
Derek Brindisi, Town Manager, continuing with the presentation. Derek Brindisi, welcome.
Thank you, Chad. So I just wanted to address some of the conversations about the American Cruise Lines, because there are a lot of rumors that, as presented earlier, that this article is strictly about supporting the American Cruise Lines, which, as you just heard from Chad, it's not. This is a multi-use extension that was pre-planned over 5 years ago. But as far as the American Cruise Lines go, I've been working with the board. We've been negotiating with the American Cruise Lines, and it's still yet to be determined if they're going to sign an agreement with the town. Right now, we're in the conversation just negotiating a one-year agreement, not a long-term agreement. As Chad presented, that's a long-term capital improvement project, not just for one-year agreement. If the American Cruise Lines were to come to town, what's being discussed is that they would have approximately one stop per week. Starting probably in mid-June, we've met with the lobstermen. Selectmen and myself have met with the lobstermen. We've understood their concerns. They don't want to be displaced during the month of May or the parts of June because they're waiting for that last right whale to leave the harbor so that they can get their gear in the water. We know that. We're working with them. The 3 stops that the American Cruise Lines piloted this past summer, they assured the lobstermen that their winches would not be blocked, and they were not blocked. So this notion that the cruise lines is getting in the way of the lobstermen doing their work is a fallacy, and that's the rumor that has been going on. So to suggest that 10 days equates to 3 days of lost work is inaccurate. There's no time that one stop equates to 3 days of lost work. I can't see the math on that. And the last thing I want folks to realize that, again, the other thing we're working on with our board is I just had a meeting with the Commissioner of Department of Conservation and Recreation on Wednesday. And we're engaging in long-term conversations with the support of the state delegation and the support of former Senate President Terry Murray to try to engage in some type of mutual agreement where the cruise line would actually dock at the state pier and not at the town pier. So we're working on a lot of things to support our lobstermen, to support our fishermen. So anything outside of that is untrue. This article is to focus on what we can do for all types of uses in our harbor, not just American Cruise Lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Wrestling Brewster, Precinct 15. We'll continue.
Wrestling Brewster, Precinct 15. I come before this body with many hats, and my hat today is from the Harbor Committee. The Harbor Committee, Chad brought this to the Harbor Committee, and the Harbor Committee did not support this. I believe it was a 10-to-1 vote. Most of the reasons that they did not want this is because they didn't have any input on this, and as your advisory for the harbor, we thought that we should have some input for that, and that we're looking at that dock as it could be constructed better to have more uses. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's continue.
Anthony Mayo, Precinct 6. I have
Thanks,
one question
Anthony.
for Chad. Recently, we had the harbor dredged with federal money, and do you foresee if we have to go back to dredge the harbor again using federal money, that not having an extension or somehow accommodating commercial vessels might impede on that? And then the second question is, what is the revenue, or how much does like a ship that comes to Plymouth and dock, what does that cost per day, or in general in revenue? Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Anthony Mayo, Chad Hunter.
That's a
Harbor
great
Master.
question. Whenever we request, in this case, Army Corps to come in and dredge the harbor, and we just went through this exercise 4 or 5 years ago, really they look at the metrics of the harbor itself. So how many commercial fishing vessels do you support? Do you have cargo? You know, it's Army Corps. They're doing every port in the country, deep water ports like Boston, where they have cruise ships, commerce, ferries. Really, the more you can put on that application, the better off you rank amongst some of these bigger ports. So to that point, you know, any performance metrics that you can put into place, economics and what the harbor means to the town and to the country and the state, that's important, and that gives you a little bit higher ranking.
Thank you. Alan Costello, Precinct 10.
Yes, Alan Costello, Precinct 10. I'd like to speak to this project. I'd like to speak against it. I don't want to combine both topics, the actual cruise ship coming into Plymouth. I'd like to keep it on the actual project at hand, this float. This float for $250,000 that we're being asked to vote on today. This float, if you turn to page 83 and 84 in your book like I did 2 weeks ago, it hit me right away. The cruise ship is superimposed on our drawing. The drawing is actually an engineered drawing that was asked for and purchased by American Cruise Lines. So they've done the legwork. This is something that they would like. I'm not sure if this float is contingent on them coming in the future. I'd like to get that answer. I asked it of Mr. Hunter at the caucus, and he was gracious enough to visit with us, and he had some good points. He was not able to answer it. He wanted me to forward that question to the town manager. But there's several things that are wrong with this. We, the taxpayer, are being asked to spend $250,000 for a piece of infrastructure for a private company where no one has been able to show us the economic benefit as residents. Now, the American Cruise Line is going to make out, no problem at all. I'd like to know if there was any conversation with them to pick up the tab for this. And then, as the town manager just said, and this is the most thing that sort of baffles me, is that there's some negotiations to put this cruise line on the state pier. We all know where the state pier is, where the Mayflower is. And town meeting has done this in the past, and it blows my mind. But we're being asked to spend $250,000 today for a float on the town wharf when it was just told to us that in the next couple of years, that boat may go to the state pier. Doesn't make an ounce of sense. Now, that float could be used, I guess, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, for an occasional tall ship that comes in. But the problem we have today is the need we have of the fishermen and the recreational people that try to use that harbor today. That corner is very, very congested. And everything is being taken up by public safety, and now this cruise line, it's squeezing out the
30
average
seconds.
recreational boater. So I would ask that this body vote this down today. Bring it back at a later time if you can answer some of those questions. But right now, and I hate to keep beating this drum, I know no one wants to hear me talk, but I am not going to ask my neighbor to put down $250,000 for float they will never, ever step on. Thank you.
Ethan Kuzman, Precinct 2, followed by Christopher Hull, Precinct 14.
Hi, Ethan Kuzman, Precinct 2. Yeah, I have sort of a physical problem with this. You know, the cruise ship sticks out that additional 30, 40 feet, whatever it does, as it shows in the picture. I don't understand why that's a problem. When you show it there, it still seems like they're able to get on and off of the boat, no problem. And that's a real bottleneck there that this is going to create. A lot of people that we do who boat out there use that little gangway that goes out in front of Cabbie Shack to drop kids off, to run in, pick up food. You know, you see people doing that all the time. With this extension of 65 feet, Between that and the harbor master, it's going to create a very tight little neck to get in and out. I understand when the cruise ship's there, that's going to happen anyway. But when the cruise ship isn't there, you have all the different zodiacs that people use to get to their boats. And it would really create a very tight little area if you have people pulling in and pulling out to get past the harbor master, past this new dock. I don't really see the reason for the dock. If we can fit the cruise ship in as is, why we're creating this blockage there, it just, to me, doesn't seem like it's needed at this point. And if that's the biggest boat we're going to have, well, if we bring a tall ship in, the tall ship can sit where the boat currently sits. So I don't know why we're extending it if we already have room for any tall ship that may pull in. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Houle, we're going to bring in remotely. He's from Precinct 14, followed by Maureen Renault, Precinct 6. This is Plymouth's Fall Annual Town Meeting. This is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School. We have people here in person at Plymouth North High School, and we also have people who are participating remotely. If we can bring him in, I don't know if you have to elevate him to be a panelist, but it's Christopher Houle, and he is Precinct 14. He's asked to speak, and he's looking to be brought in to the Center for Performing Arts. He'll be followed by Maureen Renault, followed by Everett Malaguti, and we are currently debating a recommendation under Article 4A4, Town Wharf Extension. We give speaking priority first to town meeting members, and we're continuing with the debate. Mr. Houle, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christopher Houle, Precinct 14. Two questions for Mr. Hunter. One, if he could speak to the status of the regulatory permits required for this. That wasn't provided in our town meeting book in terms of if those permits have been secured or the expected timeline for that. And then secondly, given the information that he just presented in the presentation, why has the request, funding request, not been reduced given the overage of about $110,000 or so, if I remember that correctly? Thank you.
Thank you. Chad Hunter is our harbor master responding to Christopher Houle, who is participating remotely. Chad Hunter.
Thank you for those questions. So the permits are in place. We actually did a zone of reconfiguration in this corner where we have the ability to sort of streamline moving docks or putting new docks in. So the permits are in place, and as far as the timeline, this would be happening this winter, ready for next spring. And then we opened the bid obviously Thursday, but we do have some contingency built in to the request, and we would like to keep that. I mean, this is a pretty straightforward project in the sense that you buy the float from the manufacturer, and then the work is to put the 4 piles in place. So it's not a very dynamic project. But ultimately, if we run into an issue, we want some contingency there to be able to deal with that. Any money that we didn't use in contingency gets returned to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we continue with Maureen Renault, Precinct 6, followed by Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So it's getting harder and harder to make a living fishing. And I say that as someone who's a family of generational fishermen in Situate and Boston and some in Plymouth. And I know that Mr. Brindisi said, that some lobstermen said that this would be okay. That's not enough for me. I would like to see this move to the next town meeting when we get a better idea of what's going to happen to our fishing community. Not only is it for the people that have to raise their family that way, but it's a real important part of our heritage. Thanks.
Thank you. Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2. We're continuing with Plymouth's Fall Annual Town Meeting. Mr. Malaguti.
Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2. So first I wanted to ask Mr. Hunter, I don't think it was actually answered by one of our previous speakers, of the actual cost a vessel would actually be charged and what the revenue would be per day for this. I think that was one of the questions that was asked and wasn't answered.
Chad Hunter.
Yeah, so revenue would vary depending on what type of use, but every vessel that used this facility is paying some sort of dockage. With the cruise line, that's ultimately up to the select board and the town manager, what they assign for, a stay. But typically for commercial dockage, they pay either for the year, by the month, or by the day. So that's $40 per foot per year for the length of their vessel, $500 a month, or $70 a day to use this facility.
Mr. Malaguti.
So listening to all the other speakers on this, and I applaud the effort of the town manager and the select board of trying to bring in new opportunities and revenue sources toward the harbor and to actually make it a more vibrant place, as well as Mr. Hunter for doing this for years of trying to enhance the betterment, not of just the residents, but of visitors alike. But in my opinion, I still have not seen the data metrics for what the actual benefit has been for the cruise line. I know this was also asked at our VSB meeting in a way, and we still didn't get any logistic answer to that. So in my opinion, as of right now, I would love to support this, but I can't at this town meeting. So I just wanted to voice my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen Leiden, Precinct 17. Mr. Leiden.
Yes, this project was designed and planned 5 years ago, before the cruise ships ever bothered, we haven't thought about them. We have some tall ships come in. The Chamber of Commerce does a great job of bringing them in. I don't have a boat. I don't go in and out of the harbor. But, this is the future. This is the future of the harbor. The fishermen, the lobstermen have not been impacted to unload their boats whether the cruise line is in or it's not in. So I don't think this affects them at all. If it can bring more money into Plymouth, which we are dying to get because we have no commercial land, so we need to bring as much money into the town as we can, as long as it doesn't really affect anyone. And I can't see where it does. So I would support this. Thank you.
Derek Brindisi, Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Leiden. You took some of my words, but it's up until Mr. Leiden speaking, it sounds like most of the speakers think that this is about the cruise lines, and that's what I tried to dispel earlier. This is not about the cruise lines. The reason it's before you this afternoon is because we are, as Mr. Hunter pointed out, we already have a boat ramp project taking place. So we wanted to go out to bid. This is a timing issue. Trying to extend the pier per the original design of the pier going back 5 years ago. And we were trying to take advantage of the contractor already being in place, already installing piles, already installing concrete floats, already repairing our town boat ramp. This is all about timing. This is not about the cruise lines. Like I said earlier, the cruise lines, it's a 50-50 chance whether or not we even execute an agreement with the cruise lines. To Mr. Costello, you had mentioned we should move this until the questions are answered. We're here. Ask the questions. We are happy to answer those questions this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to town meeting members first. Yellow pad in the back. Are you a town meeting member? No. Okay. Thank you. Nancy Davis, Precinct 2.
Hi, Nancy Davis, Precinct 2. I just wanted to speak quickly on pollution, and I realize that Mr. Brindisi said there's a 50-50 chance, but mid-size cruise ship actually emits greenhouse gases equal to about 12,000 cars. Barcelona in Spain is fighting to get rid of small cruise lines coming into their harbor due to destruction of smaller fish and wildlife. There's ballast water, gray water emissions, cause excess algae growth, raise O2 levels in the water. I'm not a tree hugger person, by the way, but there's injury to animals, and sulfur dioxide gets released, oceanic acid rises. There's the oyster farms over in Duxbury and things like that, and the slight changes could, impact their industries, and we already have a rise in ocean acidity as a problem. Plus, I haven't heard anything, as other people have spoken about, the economic impacts for local jobs or anything else that this would bring, so I do hear a worry about lobstermen and the other, and I would agree that we should push this forward until those issues are ironed out, so I'm going to vote no.
Richard Cirque, Precinct 2. Nate Siegel, Precinct 14. Mr. Cirque.
I have two concerns based on what I've heard this morning. One is the fact that Mr. Brewster indicated that there was no presentation before the Harbor Committee, and that the vote of the Harbor Committee, except for one person, was totally negative. That concerns me because they focus on that area of the town. The other comment that I wanted to say is, Mr. Cusman said that you can get off this boat, you can look at the picture, you can get off this boat by the main stairway, the plank area that puts you on the existing wharf. Why do we need an extension of the existing wharf if the gangway from the boat can already get you onto the existing dock? I would urge you to look at the plan on page 84, and you look where it says line 5, right above cleat 1 or cleat I. You can get onto the harbor, to the existing harbor, by walking onto it. So I don't know why we need this extension.
Thank you. Richard Neely, Precinct 15, moves to close debate. It is not debatable. You can look and see who's standing in the room. And in addition to those standing, we had 2 non-town meeting members who asked to be heard. And we're now going to take a vote on whether to close debate. It is a 2/3 vote on whether to close debate on Article 4A4, Town Wharf Extension. When the light goes on, you'll be voting on whether to close debate. You can vote now. 1 is a yes, 2 is a no, 3 is an abstention. We're voting on whether to close debate on Article 4A4. It is a 2/3 vote, and you're voting on whether to close debate on Article 4A4. Town meeting members are voting. They're using devices in the room and also V-Voter. And town meeting members, we can't have it half and half. Some people have said, I want to be in person in the morning, remote in the afternoon. We can't do that with the technology. So again, just so you understand, it's one or the other. 140 voted. Here's the total. 56 say yes, no 83, 1 abstention. We'll scroll through the precincts as we do. We're going to go back to Nathan Siegel, Precinct 14, followed by Albert Donato, Precinct 17. Mr. Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nate Siegel, Precinct 14. So we spend a lot of time and energy discussing sources of revenue other than property tax, right? And we have one of those opportunities in front of us, I think, with this infrastructure investment. I think it would be helpful. I know town manager's spoken quite a bit, but I think part of the confusion that we're seeing is that we're saying on one hand it's not all about the big cruise ship, but the big cruise ship is right there in the picture, and it's clear that this is in some way about the big cruise ship. So maybe again, Mr. Brindisi or Mr. Hunter, you could just explain, how does this investment bring in money, bring in revenue to make sense for the $500,000 investment, whether it's through the cruise ship or other opportunities, flexibility that this provides the harbor?
Thank you. Chad Hunter is the harbor master.
It's a great question, and I think as far as Plymouth and the benefit to the cruise ship, we had 3 trial runs. I don't think there's enough data there to really say what it does for Plymouth, but any use, whether it's the cruise ship, commercial fishing vessels, scallopers, draggers, any of that, and I kind of point to that return on investment number, that might not just be, I mean, that's obviously a hard number. We're saying, okay, over the lifespan of this pier, this is what we have to bring in each year. That's part of the equation. There's also the revenue that comes in from the sale of commercial seafood. There's the impact to tourism in the town of Plymouth when a cruise ship comes into port. So no matter what that use, there's all these other ancillary revenues that come in, whether it's fuel sales for commercial boats, all of that stuff kind of compounds. So although we don't have an exact number for you, ultimately, however this is used, and it will be used, the demand is there whether the cruise ship comes into Plymouth or not. I could fill that with commercial vessels tomorrow. We've been turning some away because we're a little unsure as to where we'll be in the summer. But I think that demand is there. And no matter what and how we use this, a tall ship coming in, You know, they might not pay much for dockage because it's an event that the town would host or sponsor, but everybody coming down to Plymouth will spend money. So I think that's, even though we focus on those hard numbers, there's a lot more to anything that uses that will bring to the community.
Thank you. Moving on, David Golden, Precinct 7, followed by Alan Costello, Precinct 10. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dave Golden, Precinct 7. The Harbor Master stole a little bit of my thunder right there, but I think the important question before us right now is whether or not this extension will provide benefit to the other users of our harbor, both the current ones and the potential ones, should we extend. We should separate this from the cruise line. It's not a cruise line decision. It's about how many folks we can get in and out of our harbor aside from the cruise line. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Costello, Precinct 10.
Yes, Alan Costello, Precinct 10. And to the town manager's point, I respect it. I'd like to ask two questions if he's capable of fielding them. The first question would be, is this float, or the approval of this float today, contingent on the cruise line visiting in the future? That's one.
Derek Brindisi responding to Alan Costello from Precinct 10. Mr. Brindisi.
So the short answer to that question is no. The cruise ship has already proven that they can tie up with the existing pier. The long-term game is to go after the state pier and have a cruise ship there. Again, that's assuming we execute an agreement, but the agreement is not based upon this morning's vote.
Okay, very good. And if you just don't mind, stay there one. The Harbor Master, Mr. Hunter, had a presentation at our caucus. It was very convincing, and I almost changed my mind, and I almost went for this. But the thing I did next was I had two representatives from the fishing industry spoke next. And I would tell you, to a person, everyone in the room flipped. Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I would suggest to you that the vast majority flipped their opinion and they decided against this internally. So I guess my point is this. They brought facts. They brought a representative from the lobster fishery. $5 million a year go through that dock. The oyster farm industry was represented. The tuna fish fishery was represented. A total of $13 million goes through that dock. And I know, and I said this, I prefaced this when I talked earlier, we got to talk about this as a separate issue. So I'm telling you right now that I have, my caucus has $13 million in our pocket as that float works today, or that wharf works today. What can you show me or us as a group that the economic benefit from this whole venture has a number on it? I've yet to see that. Can you produce that today?
Mr. Brindisi is town manager.
Yeah, so I would say that I think Mr. Hunter has already answered that question relative to the potential revenue that can be had with this extension. He just pointed out if the cruise lines don't even come to the harbor ever again, he can fill that new space up with draggers and other fishermen boats that want to come here. The demand is there. To your point, right?
30 seconds.
The demand is there. But I can say the gentleman in the back, Mr. O'Reilly, Mr. Danny Holmes from the president of the Lobstermen Association, we've met with all of them. We've heard their concerns, and they agreed to allow the select board to move forward in negotiations as long as we address their concerns. So anything outside of that is disingenuous on their part.
All right, well, I'm not getting back into he said, she said. Mr. Moderator, can I ask you the procedure to allow non-town meeting members to speak on this issue?
We have a town meeting rule, and the town meeting rule is to hear town meeting members first. Mr. Costello, your time is over. Mr. DeLapp, do you have a motion?
No, I just wanted to, Jeff DeLapp, Precinct 13, just ask the other town meeting members if they'd be willing to sit down so we could hear from the two fishermen in the back. Thank you.
I yield my time.
We're not yielding time, but if there are no town meeting members rising to be heard, I will call on the non-town meeting members. Thank you. First calling on Thomas O'Reilly, followed by Paul Quintal. Welcome Thomas O'Reilly, who is a Plymouth resident. Mr. O'Reilly.
Go all the way down.
Actually, I'm sorry. I do have some town meeting members that want to be heard first. I'm going to call on Richard Neely, Precinct 15, followed by Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9. And we'll bring in Mr. Neely. This is Plymouth's Fall Annual Town Meeting. It's coming to you live from Plymouth North High School. We have people participating in person. We have people participating remotely. We're going to first bring in Richard Neely, Precinct 15. He is remote. He is using the vVoter platform and also supported with the Zoom video conferencing from PAC TV. Richard Neely is Precinct 15. He'll be followed by Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9, and she is also participating remotely. Thereafter, we would go to the additional speakers. We're going to bring in, excuse me? Okay, Mr. Neely, go ahead. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. During all of the discussions regarding docking at the state pier, at the town pier, we have left off any mention of other dockage. And I'm talking about up at the rope park. There is a potential there for cruise line dockage, commercial dockage. I don't know what the impact on the plans for dockage there, its influence on them, and their influence on dockage in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9. We'll bring in Catherine Holmes, again, who is remote. I would note she requested last week to be remote. She did appear this morning in person, but again, going forward, we cannot have people bouncing back and forth in person remote, only because the technology really can't support that. We have to assign either clickers for people in person, or we have to assign the vVoter credentials in the Zoom. She's ready. Catherine, welcome.
Well, thank you for that public spanking, Mr. Dervaletti. I will say that I hit my face on that mic and came home. I do want to hear from the fishermen. I'm still on the fence about it, so hearing from the people that are in the fishing industry is going to be critical. But I also want to say, listening to the debate, there does seem to be this debate of whether we want cruise lines coming into the harbor or whether this dock is about that. I think the debate on whether cruise lines come into the harbor, that's really not what we should be discussing. What we need to be discussing is the reality of our taxes in Plymouth. So just to know, cruises bring in people who spend money in our restaurants and buy things in our shops downtown, an area that we really need to support our business community. We have a parking problem. Cruises come in, there's no parking issue outside where people come into the city, it's in the harbor. We are supported in a lot of the things that we spend money on in the meals and rooms tax. The more people we can bring into downtown Plymouth and support our businesses, the more we will be able to purchase things that we need. And I'm just going to remind everybody, like I did at the COPC, we have, if you looked at the school board presentation, 5 elementary schools that need to be replaced or significantly rebuilt in the next 8 years. And according to the superintendent of schools, we are going to be asked to vote on the funding for a new school, a new elementary school in our spring, most likely in our Springtown meeting, that's going to be somewhere in the uppers of $20 to $40 million. We need to be generating revenue so that we can offset some of these big expenses that are coming before us. So I'll yield the rest of my time to the fishermen. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas O'Reilly, followed by Paul Quinto. Mr. O'Reilly.
Can I go first?
Yes, Mr. O'Reilly contacted me first, but sure, Mr. Quinto, go ahead.
My name is Paul Quintal, and I have been a longtime resident of Precinct 10 and a Plymouth Harbor Committee member for over 25 years. Could I ask the screen operator to put the diagram back up on there?
Go ahead, Mr. Quintal.
My comments are regarding the town wharf extension. And speaking with many town reps over recent weeks, most do not completely understand Article 4-A. I would like to clarify what is not in your book. You are being asked to fund a 65 by 20 foot float, 4 piles and a ramp at a cost of $664,000. This will be located on the north end of the new town wharf behind Woods. The main purpose of this float is to support a safe tie-up for American Cruise Lines. Look at the bottom right on the screen. That was designed for American Cruise Lines, not any other vessels at this time. As shown in the diagram on page 83 in your book, the ship overhangs the dock by 70 feet. This diagram is dated June 2023, long before 3 test runs that took place in late August and early September. This project was fast-tracked through the town with engineering, appraisals, permits, and completed bids in less than 5 months, which is amazing. The piles that are secured, if you look at the green area, they show 4 piles on the outside corners. Well, you cannot tie a boat where those piles are, so the north and the south end of that green area is unusable. A better option would be to take and put the 4 piles internally on this float. It gives you access to all 4 sides of this. An example is this: go down the state boat ramp. We have a pier that works just like that. We use all 4 sides. Historically, the Plymouth Harbor Committee opinion has always been used to consider projects of this level. The Plymouth Harbor Committee was left out. A recent Plymouth Harbor Committee vote resulted in a 10-member against this project and only 1 member in favor. Many commercial users are also against this project. At the last Plymouth Harbor Committee meeting, an elected official and our town manager tonight alluded to that we're looking at the state pier. The east face of that state pier is a mess.
30 seconds.
And it's going to need a lot of money. They're going to be coming back to this body looking for more funds. We don't need 2 cruise docks. I would suggest that we reassess this, and to my knowledge, American Cruise Lines is not contributing financially to this project and will be totally funded on the backs of our local taxpayers. I would like to see the financial impact details and the time frame on the return of investment to the town of Plymouth. I have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Quintal. Betty Cavaco, before we go to the non-town meeting member, you requesting to be heard?
I am, but I'd like to have Mr. O'Reilly speak first.
I think I heard a request for more time, Mr. Quintal. Mr. Quintal, how much more time do you need?
I just have 2 questions, and I'm done.
How much time?
Thank you for that.
How much time?
Oh, my questions are short.
Okay.
One is to
1 minute, thank you. Go ahead.
This body here should know that we are tapping out the permit for dockage. I don't have the details, but I'm asking our Harbor Master Hunter if he could allude to this group, that when this float goes in, we're tapped out in that corner. We can't add any more docks. Am I correct? Could you let this group know? Because I don't have the details. But you're better informed than I.
Thank you. Chad Hunter, Plymouth Harbor Master.
The way we did the zone of reconfiguration, yes. We could always go back to add, you'd have to go through the permitting process again. So we could add more floats, but you have to go through that process again, which is
30
money and time.
seconds. Thank you.
And could I ask one question for our town
Go ahead.
manager? What is American Cruise Line's annual revenue to this town per visit?
Derek Brindisi, Town Manager, responding to Paul Quintal. Derek Brindisi, welcome.
So the short answer, there is no revenue because we don't have an agreement signed with them. I can tell you they had 3 stops in the month of August that generated $6,000 in revenue for those 3 stops.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank
I
you,
appreciate
Mr.
the
Quintal.
time and the extra.
Thank you. And do we have a town meeting member in the back? No? No, thank you. Mr. O'Reilly. Thomas O'Reilly, Plymouth resident, speaking in connection with Article 4A4. Thomas O'Reilly, welcome.
Morning, everyone. My name's Tom O'Reilly. I've been living in this town for 50 years, 40 years a commercial lobsterman, and I'm on the Harbor Committee. I'm kind of going to go off the rail here about what people have been talking about. I want to let the town manager know, and I'm giving him credit, that we have worked together. The lobstermen have talked, we've worked together, and we're still working. And we're going to sit down before contract sign, right, and talk again. I believe this whole thing has to be separated. Everyone's talking about the cruise ship. Yes, I'll be honest with you, I don't want it, but it's going to happen. We have to move to the float. Now, the Harbor Committee voted 10-1 against it. Plymouth has a commercial fishing organization which has lobstermen, tuna fishermen, oystermen, clam, and any kind of fishing you can think of. We had a meeting and it was unanimous about this extension. And let me explain why. This extension is a single-use dock for big boats. It sits 36 inches off the water. It has 12-inch cleats. Nobody can tie against those, the smaller boats. We have 650 mooring holders in Plymouth Harbor with nowhere to tie up. What the Harbor Committee was looking for, and has been looking for since the day I got on that committee, is more floats. So everybody has use, everybody can tie up. We can't on this float. So what I'm asking for you is to vote against this float, because it's not conducive to what we want in the harbor. Everyone talks about revenue coming in. You put a float down there that we've asked for, that's just 15-minute tie-up. People are gonna come in, tie their boats to the dock, bring their family up, get food. There's no place, there's one spot down the dock now that doesn't even have water because the town hasn't run the water down to it. So in closing, what I'm asking is, please vote this down, because it's not beneficial to the harbor. If you want to vote on something
30
that's going to be
seconds.
beneficial, let us come back to you with a different configuration, smaller docks, and something everybody can use, not just these bigger boats. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Betty Cavaco, Precinct 6, Christopher Houle, Precinct 14. Betty Cavaco, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to address town meeting, my first time as a town meeting member. But a couple of things that I wanted to clarify, because I've heard that, you know, that this is a one-use thing, it's for American Cruise Line, and I can't remember if it was Mr. Brandisi or Mr. Hunter that said that this has been in discussions up to 5 years ago, which is in fact true. We had discussed this 5 years ago when I was part of the select board, and I think that it's disingenuous to say that this is just for the American Cruise Line, because the American Cruise Line wasn't even a thought for this discussion 5 years ago. And though I do appreciate the Harbor Committee, which I served on for 3 years, we have to start thinking about being more proactive for what our harbor needs. And if it's tie-ups and it's one of the things that I fought for, then you know what? Get with the town manager, get with the harbor master, and make more room for tie-ups. There's plenty of room for that. But, you know, if in 2 years, if we vote this down, in 2 years we say, oh, now we're gonna need to get more commercial space, more commercial dock, everybody in this room, plus all of our residents, are saying, why didn't you do it when you had the opportunity to do it at a lesser cost? So for me, this dock extension has nothing to do with the American Cruise Line. I personally could care less if the American Cruise Line is here. I know some of the businesses think it's important, but let's not muddle the waters and say this is a one-use thing for the dock, because American Cruise Line wasn't even in the picture when this was first brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move, unless we have any procedural motions, I'm moving to Christopher Houle, Precinct 14. Let's bring him in remotely. I think the last time, there he is. Mr. Houle, go ahead.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. Two more questions, potentially for Mr. Hunter. I wondered if you could speak to use fees. Are there existing use fees in place that this cruise line would be paying for, for like a daily use fee? And then building on that is, could those use fees, if they do exist, be amended to recoup some of the costs associated with this construction? And then secondly, I wondered if you could share either put the slide up again, your last slide in the presentation that had the bid results, or share those numbers verbally with us.
Thank you. Chad Hunter, Harbor Master.
Okay, so
responding.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, in the presentation, I did mention the cruise ship was used as part of the design criteria. So that slide that's up with the, which is not up, the says American Cruise Lines on the bottom. That was part of the design criteria. As far as the fees, ultimately, that will depend on the contract that the town manager and the select board are working on right now. I would assume that the fees generated from cruise ship stays would offset the cost of this expenditure. And just as far as the bids go, I'll give you we had three bidders. The low bid was $534,000, the second was $549,000, and the third was $1.791 million. So those are the three bids that we received.
Thank you, Chad Hunter. Mr. Hooley, you done? I think we may have lost.
I guess just then I'd kick a question back to the town manager, if he could address my question on use fees and how, I guess, what would be the existing use fees now for a cruise ship, and then how could those be amended to try to recoup some of the costs associated with this project?
Derek Brindisi, Town Manager.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions regarding fees that we may generate from American Cruise Lines. Any other dockage fees, I'll defer to our harbor master. So again, like I had mentioned earlier, they had 3 tie-ups this past summer, $6,000. So that equates to approximately $2,000 per tie-up. The harbor master has done an analysis of cruise ships and other local ports, and it ranges anywhere from $500 to $1,800. So we think we're being more than responsible by asking for $2,000 per tie-up with the American Cruise Lines, based upon the analysis of the other cruise ships and other ports.
Thank you. Mr. Delap, do you have a procedural motion?
Yes, Jeff Delap, Precinct 13. I move the question.
Move the question. Motion to close debate. We still have at least another speaker who wanted to be heard. No debate on this. It is whether or not to move forward on voting. So we're going to move whether to close debate on Article A4. You can vote now. You're voting on whether to close debate on Article 4, A4. A yes vote will close debate. A no vote will continue the debate on Article 4A4. We are in Plymouth Fall Annual Town Meeting morning session, the second half. We will continue till midday, and then we will take a lunch recess of 45 minutes. We'll return promptly after lunch. The town meeting members are voting. I see 136 have voted thus far. And we are now ending on whether to close debate. 111 say yes, 27 say no, 0 abstentions. It carries. And as we go through the precincts, I will now read again the motion on Article 4A4 is Town Wharf Expansion. And as you see in the information that's been provided to you, it is for $664,500 from free cash is the funding source. And at this time, we're going to vote on that when the light goes on. Article 4A4. The light will go on. You will vote. It's a majority vote. And it'll be roll call because it's electronic with the handsets. The light is on. You can now vote. You're voting on Article 4A4. Following this vote, we'll move on to Article 4 and the remaining A items, which are 1, 2, and then 5 through 12. So right now you're doing Article 4A4, which is for the Town Wharf Extension. We have 162 town meeting members. They are currently voting, and the light is on. It is on for 20 seconds. When the light goes off, The voting will be completed. You will then find what the total is, and 60 say yes, 77 say no, 2 abstentions. It does not carry. We will now continue with a motion for Article 4, items A1, A2, A5, A6, A7, A8, A9, A10, A11, and A12. I believe that I had a speaker on A7, and I'm going to go to Catherine Holmes, who's participating remotely. Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9, has requested that she be heard on item A7, which is part of this final grouping. So we'll bring in, go ahead, Catherine.
No, I rescind that.
Thank you. Further discussion on any of these items? If not, yes, Kevin Lynch, please come to microphone. We're debating Mr.
Yes,
Lynch.
Kevin Lynch, Precinct 5. In regarding the A1, the Court Street,
A1 is downtown corridors.
Downtown Resiliency Project Design, Green and Heat Island Reduction Infrastructure. Sounds very sophisticated, to the tune of $126,000. If we turn to page 70, it's almost like this is what we will actually be asking other people to design for us. And yet, we seem to be, have a desire to hire experts for things that we already can do, as you can see on page 70. I mean, it's called brainstorming, folks. It's not rocket science. Someone said, now please understand, show respect. They said the Garden Club, Plymouth Garden Club, could come up with quite a bit of things that would make this part of Main Street look a lot more attractive than what it is right now. I think we have the brain power here in town, but for some reason or other, unfortunately, we have 162 people that somehow or other think that, no, we're just going to push them aside. And I got a lot of, I'm glancing around very quickly, a lot of, as they say, townies that, would like to chip in with their ideas, but it's like, no, we've hired experts. It's tough. I will not be voting for this. I just ask you to look at page 70 and says, gee, that's just a kindergarten person. No, it's not. It's a person that's up on 4th floor. He came up with these ideas. They've already gone and solved the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Wrestling Brewster, Precinct 15. Mr. Brewster.
Wrestling Brewster, Precinct 15. Just a matter of perspective. I just want to mention to town meeting that we spent about 45 minutes arguing that $25,000 was too much to ask our taxpayers. Mr. Lynch is the only one who commented on this large article. Just matter of perspective.
Further discussion? David Gould. We're debating Article 4. We have items beginning A1 through 12. Mr. Gould.
Good morning, town meeting. David Gould, Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs. I just wanted to answer Mr. Lynch's question. While this is not my article, I'm certainly participated in it with the Sustainability Climate Resiliency Coordinator. Half the funds are coming from the Environmental Affairs funds. To your point, Mr. Lynch, there certainly will be a significant public process during this planning. The reason for the funds, though, are to hire the experts who do the initial survey, all the stormwater design, all the engineering and traffic studies. Those we do not have all in-house. We have some capability, but we certainly don't have the time and resources to do a project of this size and scale. That's why you see those funds, because we need the engineering firm to come in and do that work on behalf of the town. There will be a public process, there will be input, there will be design criteria, there will be suggestions from the public that we will certainly incorporate into the plans and implement. Thank you.
Stephen Leiden, Precinct 17.
Steve Leiden, Precinct 17. This project will also be married with the other project that is doing this traffic study. So the same engineer that's doing that will be doing this. If you're going to do something, let's do it right. Let's get the people in here who know what they're doing. You have you have a gentleman that we hired to look at this. why are we micromanaging him? It's something that needs to be done. It's going to improve the downtown. It's also going to help tourism, which is the largest industry in this town. So there's a lot of things about it. We just don't have a public group to come in and be able to do, as David said, stormwater drainage and everything else. So I would support this.
Further discussion? Michael Babini, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Murray. I just have a question for David. The GPI is doing both studies. They're doing the downtown traffic parking study, downtown North Plymouth, and this study. Obviously, some of the requirements are overlapping. Was that taken into consideration on this bid?
Thank you. Question from Michael Babini, he's from Precinct 3. David Gould responding.
So that was definitely part of the consideration. It's also part of why we worked and sought to use GPI for this particular project. We thought it was much more of a streamlined approach if we had one firm doing both of those studies so that you didn't have two firms working against each other. The GPI team that's going to be working on this project is going to know what the GPI team on the other side is doing, so there'll be that collaboration and coordination. You're welcome.
Thank you. Kevin Lynch, Precinct 5.
Yes, again, I go back to my point, ladies and gentlemen. We're spending $126,000 to very well qualified individuals, and I commend Mr. Gould with his arguments, and I know I'm shoveling sand against the ties, so to speak, but I guess it's when are we going to stop just the money coming into town hall and just going right out to other people? Again, I'm in support for the traffic study, but do we really need this? I suggest that we probably could back off on this, consider it, hey, and then be able to have the real public input. Now remember, in this town we have some difficulty getting the townspeople to come out. Hence, we're going to be talking about a master plan, $430,000. So when will the spending slow down, stop, somehow or other, as I say, tap the brakes? The townspeople, if you could, go out and talk to them, town meeting members, and I know some of you will be in support of your own ideas, but man, I tell you, there's a lot of people out there saying, hey, wait a minute, what is going on? And we're doing some great things, but do we actually need this? Sure, we need the traffic study, I'm okay with that, but $165,000 for a traffic study? Yeah, I understand that. I'm a retired science teacher. But something to go and increase the tourism factor. There's a lot of people, a lot of very creative people here in town that could do a heck of a job with $126,000. Thank you.
Kenneth Stone, Precinct 16.
So a number of years ago, the state came down and we as a town did a municipal vulnerability study related to climate change. The select board voted in favor of declaring a climate emergency. There was all kinds of input from the community to that MVP study. They made recommendations. One of the significant recommendations that they said in terms of what we need to do to protect ourselves about climate change and heat or heat islands throughout the town. This addressed that. So in terms of, is it needed? Absolutely. We've had a study that showed that. There are heat islands downtown, there are heat islands in North Plymouth. This is an important project in terms of the MVP study. Thank you.
David Gould.
Just to follow up on that a bit, the geographic extent of this area is based upon exactly what the speaker just said. So we used the MVP report, created the geographic area that identified all the heat island impacts in the downtown heading out to North Plymouth. That's the area that we settled upon for this study, while not addressing all of the questions that Mr. Lynch had about, is it a want or a desire? There is a certain part of this project that speaks to the stormwater that I mentioned earlier, and we are under regulatory requirements to improve stormwater and runoff within what we call the NIPTES urbanized areas. So there is at least a large component of this project, and that's why environmental affairs funds are going towards it, to improve the stormwater and the water quality, which is in fact a regulatory requirement of the town.
Tricia McCarthy, Precinct 18, Everett Margulies following.
Yeah, totally agree with Ken Stone, and I just want to bring your attention to page 64 in your book. All of this was explained in detail to us and about the MVP grant situation, and I quote, "The plan specifically identified mitigating stormwater runoff and heat islands as a resiliency action, and we must work to address those identified actions to meet our obligations to our residents," and we are the residents. Thank you very much.
Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2, followed by Peter Neville. Mr. Malaguti.
Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2. While I am in support of this project, I do just want to clarify that on page 65, showing the actual detailed map, it actually leaves out one portion that actually should have actually been included from an article we voted on years ago for the town square corridor for actually redo. It was a CPC article many years ago that was actually supported for the redesign of that. I think that if we did the bump out for the town parking lot by the 7-Eleven area, we should have also included that town square part, as we spent millions of dollars of taxpayer money through CPC for revitalization of that area. Plus, it's also been a neglected area, which also is a heat island as well, too, surrounded by tons of impervious pavement and buildings. Thank you.
Chad Hunter, Harbor Master, responding.
David Gould.
David Gould, oh.
We get
Sorry.
that all the time.
It's almost time for lunch.
Just to address that, this is just the initial design and engineering. We will then utilize MVP funding requests to do the implementation. Since the town square had already been designed, we don't need to include that in here. We will, in fact, include that in requests going forward once all of this engineering is done to actually implement that plan. So it's not forgotten.
Thank you. Peter Neville, Precinct 10.
You can decide whether it's appropriate for me to ask questions on A10, A11, and A12.
We are currently debating A1 through an A2 and then A5 through 12, so go ahead.
In the motions book that was handed out this morning, A10 has us committing to $500,000 for sewer RE. What does the RE relate to? And then if you look at the text on 116, you'll find that fiscal year 24 is for 500,000, and then by FY 27, it's $1 million. My question on A10 is whether or not we're committing to that schedule of payments for the next 3 years when we commit to this 500,000. So the first question is, what does RE relate to? And then whether or not there's a commitment for the next 4 fiscal years. If not, then we should anticipate, I guess, seeing this come back again. I don't know if it'll be in a supplemental budget or it'll be in the full operating budget that we see in the spring. Under A11 and A12, my question is, those funds are being appropriated to take care of emergency failures in the sewer system and in the water system. Absent those emergency situations, how is that money handled? And that's probably, Lynn, you probably know the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
William Cole is the Director of the Department of Public Works. Welcome, Mr. Coyle.
Good morning, everybody, Mr. Moderator. I do my best to try to answer your questions. The $500,000 is for the CMOM program. That's an EPA requirement. It's an annual requirement that we have. That CMOM is for capacity management, operations, and maintenance. It is a process where we inspect sewer infrastructure. We are committed to inspecting 20% of it, or 25% of it, 20% rather, per year over a 5-year period. This is going to be a continuous funding program, which I believe will be going next year in the operating budget. So you will see this each year. And so it is a program that we will be continuing with. The water and sewer infrastructure improvements, the $100,000 for each of these items is for emergency repairs. So we have gone out to bid, and we
30 seconds.
have a consultant on board, so as these calls come in, we can perform the repairs. As a matter of fact, we actually have a water main break going on right now. We're performing those repairs in-house, is to my knowledge, but these are for repairs that we cannot do in-house. The RE, I would have to look up to see what the RE is. Thank you.
Thank you. And the further question, this will end the question and answer with Mr. Cohen. We have rising, Mr. Coyle.
Yes, that was clarified. The RE is retained earnings. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Tammy Johnson is precinct 7, followed by William Cohen is precinct 3.
Tammy Johnson, precinct 7, would like to motion to end debate.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Close debate. Motion
Motion to close debate. Thank you very much. The motion to close debate, we see who's standing. This is not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. When the light goes on, you'll be voting whether to close debate on Article 4, items A1, A2, and A5 through A12. The light is on. You're now voting on whether to close debate. It's a 2/3 vote. If this passes, we will end the debate on this item, on these items, and we'll move forward. If not, we'll continue with the debate. Town meeting is in its morning session. We are on Article 4, and we are on items A1, A2, and 5 through 12, whether to close debate on that. Town meeting is voting. It's a 2/3 vote. The light is on. When the light is off, you will get the totals, and then we will move forward. Town meeting is in its morning session at Plymouth North High School on Aubrey Street in Plymouth. The voting has ended. 138 have voted. 114 say yes, 24 say no, 0 abstentions. It carries by more than 2/3. Debate is ended on Article 4. We are now going to proceed to vote on Article 4, items A1, A2, A5, A6, A7, A8, A9, A10, A11, A12. When the light goes on, you can now vote. It's a majority vote on these items. Town meeting will be voting, again, in person with using their handsets, or they'll be voting remotely using the V-Voter platform. They both merge, and we'll have the votes when the light goes on. There's the article. You can vote now. Town meeting is voting, and this is a majority vote for town meeting. And town meeting members are voting at this time. And we are in the warrant. We are continuing chronologically. We have already handled Article 5. We'll be moving to Article 6 after we continue the voting. 162 town meeting members, 138 voting at this time. When the light goes off, we will have the totals on this particular matter, and it is a majority vote. This meeting is coming to you live on October 21st. 136 say yes, 1 no, 1 abstentions. It carries. We're going to move on to Article 6. Here's the motion while you watch to see how the voting went. Mr. Neerman moves the town vote to amend the town's general bylaws, Chapter 166, by striking its entirety as written in the fall 2023 annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Neerman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 6 by a unanimous vote of 11 for, 0 against, 0 abstention.
Any discussion on Article 6? If not, we're going to move to the vote. As soon as the light goes on, we'll proceed with the vote on Article 6. We have the motion from the Advisory and Finance Committee, and it is a majority vote. All of these are roll call. The light is on. Please vote. You are voting on Article 6, the motion presented by the Advisory and Finance Committee. Plymouth Fall's annual town meeting is coming to you live on October 21st. We are in the morning session. We are following the warrant. We have 24 articles in the warrant. We are currently voting on Article 6. 162 town meeting members, 138 have voted on this article. When the light goes off, we'll get the totals for Article 6, the motion. Town meeting members are voting electronically, and they are supported by OTI Technologies. 138 say yes, 1 no, 1 abstentions. It carries. While you look at the voting, I will announce that Article 7 is withdrawn. I will read Article 8, the motion, and it is, Mr. Neerman moves that town appropriate the sum of $430,000 to pay costs of updating Plymouth's comprehensive master plan, and for the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, transfer such sum of money from free cash. It's a majority vote and a roll call. Mr. Neerman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 8 by a unanimous vote of 14 for, 0 against, 0 abstentions.
Thank you. Stephen Bulletin is the chair of the Master Plan Task Group and vice chair of the Planning Board. Welcome, Mr. Bulletin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, everyone. Still morning. I'd like to start first by just recognizing my fellow planning board members who came here today, our chair, Mr. Grandy, Ms. Keene, Mr. Peck, and Mr. Donaldson, who was here earlier. With me, of course, is our Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Hartman. I'm here to speak again, very briefly if I can, on Article 8, the Master Plan Funding Proposal. I've been before most of you through the caucuses, but certainly not everyone. When it comes to planning, Plymouth has become reactive rather than proactive. As has been explained at the various caucuses, a lot of this is due because 20 years ago, we made a mistake. Instead of preparing a detailed scope of services, running it through our boards and committees, and then coming to you, town meeting, to properly vet this, we decided instead to hire a single master planner to oversee our process. That didn't work out. As a result, we have a master plan that is missing key section, is internally inconsistent, and does not contain an implementation procedure. That is probably the critical issue. As a result of those failings, our master plan is not a document that town leaders regularly look to follow. They don't know what the residents want, and they aren't following that procedure. We are here today to finally change that. After 2 years of study, the Master Plan Task Group, and I commend all of my members of that committee who have worked very diligently to do this, did a gap analysis, prepared a detailed scope of work, and did a budget analysis to present to you folks today so that you can look at that with the full understanding as to what it is we're proposing, why it is we're proposing it, and how important it is to the residents, so that you, as town meeting members, can go back to them and say, we are looking at planning for Plymouth. Not the hodgepodge, not the inconsistencies, planning for Plymouth. Now, even those who have spoken at the caucuses against this particular proposal have acknowledged we need a new master plan. That doesn't seem to be a subject of debate. What seems to be the question is to how we go about doing it. It's been suggested that instead of going out now to get a proper consultancy group to do this work, we should first hire a single master planner to oversee the process. That's not something that any other town has done, and there's a reason for that. Towns hire consultants rather than employees to manage their master plans because consultants have the expertise, they have the resources, they have the independent perspective that is necessary for a master plan, and most importantly, they're less expensive. If we were to hire a master planner to oversee this process, we would be duplicating the work we would have with our consultants, but we would be doubling the cost. We don't recommend that. That's not a good use of town money. The residents shouldn't be paying for more administration. They should be paying for the things we need: public outreach, data analysis, creation of an implementation plan. Now, there has been some suggestion around town that our town staff are not up to the task of overseeing our master plan. That's not true, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hartman to address that.
Lee Hartman is Director of Planning Development. Welcome, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, and good almost still morning. So yes, the discussion about whether or not we're able as a staff to assist the community in this endeavor is not true. We are totally able and ready to do it. We've done it for the last 2 years with the Master Plan Task Group. We're ready to do it, and not only is this a priority of the Planning Department and the Planning Board, it's a goal of the Select Board and the Town Manager. So I can confidently say that beyond just my department, the Planning and Development Department, we have the resources of the entire town framework that will be there to assist the community. And just one other quick point that I want to make. From what I can see, the last time we really went out, and this RFP and this process really talks about meeting with the community and asking the community, what's your goal? What's your vision? Not the planning boards, not mine, not the select board, but the community. So this master plan really focuses on getting that public comment. From what I can see, I think the last time we really did that was 43 years ago, 1980. I think it's time to actually ask the community and develop a plan that the community supports. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bulletin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There's simply no benefit to delaying doing the master plan, but there are potential detriments. There's the increased cost of consultants, because let's face it, nothing is getting cheaper as we wait. There is the possibility that we will risk losing a $70,000 state earmark that has been given to the town, or at least identified in the state budget, towards the master plan. If we don't spend that, it is possible that we may lose that, again, increasing the cost to our residents. And ultimately, the town may not have free cash at the time that we want to go forward with our master plan. According to our finance director, we do now. And I know free cash is not free. It's what we've already spent. It's our residents' money. And we are being incredibly mindful of that. We've chosen a budget that is realistic, that is appropriate, that works based upon the studies the town has already done. And we've talked about some of those studies today. All of those studies will be incorporated as part of our master plan. What we don't want to have happen is we don't want to delay and have further problems down the road. This is something that, again, is a long time coming. It is time that we really plan for Plymouth, so I hope you'll support Article 8. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That completes the presentation on Article 8. Town meeting will be in recess for 45 minutes. Debate will begin after lunch.
Perfect.
12:02.